Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto was the childhood fiancé of Ria's high school DxD. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Mad Raptor fanfiction and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Story start. Clash. Swords clashed loudly as the ground itself shook under each ear-piercing metal clash, sparks flew as two figures raced across a forest, and trees were knocked over as the blade sliced through them like butter. The two figures clashing non-stop as the sun went down and the moon rose with it, the forest quickly losing trees as they were tossed aside like nothing. Day turned into night. Night turned into day. Day turned into night once more. That night returned back to day. "I'll give up yet." A male figure spoke as he pointed a thick sword, a two-handed broadsword that he wielded with only a single hand, while his other hand carried a shield that was covered in battle scars. His golden blonde hair was stained by dirt and blood, his blue eyes filled with life and energy, and 6 fresh scars on his face that took the shape of whisker marks. He wore a ripped brown cloak over a silver dragon scale tunic, with green slacks and brown boots. The figure standing across from him wasn't human looking. Completely skeleton in figure with glowing blue spheres in his skull for eyes, the remains of his clothing had been destroyed in the battle, with only black and golden armor existing on one of his shoulders at this point. A chipped and broken scythe existed in one of his hands, flowing with actual blood, something that it hadn't done ever. "You're a mere mortal with nothing special about you. You, who has no special powers, no special abilities, you dare intrude into the realm of the dead and challenge me, Hades." The now named Hades spoke as he looked at the scratches on his body and the broken bones that he had that would take a long time to heal up properly. Black power gathered around his bones as he launched an attack at the mortal who challenged him. He slashed a wave of power. The dead trees between them were sliced apart and the human dared to do something unbelievable to the point of foolishness. He punched the energy slash and changed its direction upwards with a punch, his knuckles now bleeding from his action. "Who cares about any of that, I just know that somewhere in your kingdom is the soul of somebody precious to me and I'm getting him back." The man gripped his sword and charged towards the god of death itself, ready to fight with everything he had still. What fueled this human? What allowed this human to fight on par with a god for several days when he was incapable of using magic and had no special abilities to call his own? The two clashed even more. This human, he's not getting weaker either, and his eyes are filled with just as much life as when he first challenged me. A god Hades was simply shocked that any human could challenge him so evenly. His own power was growing weaker the longer they fought, and it was soon going to become simply a war of stamina. A war that he wasn't sure he would win. Their war, a war of two people, had taken place over the entirety of the realm of the dead and was raising the attention of even the other gods who could feel their battle. The longer the fight went on, the longer it would take for him to repair his reputation with the other gods, as little as he cared for their thoughts. "My blood is boiling with the heat of the sun, why don't you have a taste of my special move?" the man shouted as he raised his sword up. Hades prepared himself. Nothing could have prepared him for when he simply used the reflection of the sword to blind him for a moment. That single moment was all it took for him to get knocked off of his feet and launched back a fair ways away before the sword was stabbed next to his head moments later. Hades looked up and saw the man giving him a harsh look. "You have bested me, human. What is the name of the soul you wish returned to you?" Hades hated it, it displeased him greatly, but that cheap trick had been the opening needed for this warrior to best him. He, a member of the top 10 strongest beings in the world, had been bested by a human. "I want the soul of my pet fox." He had been bested by a human who came all the way down to the realm of the dead, fighting against a god for nearly a way straight without rest, and defeated a member of the top 10 strongest beings for the sake of a pet fox. Not a human lover, not a child of sibling, not even a cousin, but instead a pet creature that had such a pathetic life force that it was impossible to imagine anyone putting their life on the line for it. Such arrogance, to challenge a god for a lower creature. Hades sneered at the human for this. He could have died for this. "That fox was my mother's gift to me, I want him back. The only two things in this world my mother gave me were my name and my fox. I've defeated you, but you can bargain for your life with my fox." The man spoke down to the god. A human, speaking down to a god. "Very well, but know this human, the afterlife will never claim you. I, god of the death, will curse you. For as long as humans exist, you will be reborn into this world. You will never be able to rest in peace." Hades spoke as he cursed the human, and he activated the curse. The whisker scars on the man's face glowed before they were seared into his very soul itself as his curse. "As long as the human race exists, you too will be forever reborn." Hades pointed a finger at the man, and the soul of a fox appeared in midair before flesh formed around the soul and it became a living creature once more. The fox landed on the man's shoulder, who pet the fox with a smile on his face. "But Kurama, you're a good boy, we've traveled the world together, can't travel without you my dearest friend." The man turned his back on Hades and started to walk away, his long journey over with. Now he could go back and travel the world once more and see what else the world had to offer him. Hades stood up as the last of his armor fell off of his skeletal body. His eyes stared at the hero with scorn and disdain. "Mortal, your name, what is the name of the man who has bested me?" Hades asked curiously, since he, a member of the top 10 strongest in the world, should not be beaten by a human with no special powers to his name. His opponent had to be a member of some ancient race of humans who were far superior to those of regular humans. "That weapon you're using, what is it made of?" Hades questioned as he also looked at the sword that had been able to compete with his scythe with only slight damage to it. The hero turned and looked at him. "I am Naruto Uzumaki, born on the island of the rising sun and raised on the nation of kings. My weapon, it's just a sword made out of iron." The man named Naruto spoke as he lifted his sword up before he turned around and kept walking away. "Impossible." A regular human, using a regular sword, had bested him in combat. It wasn't a human from a special clan or sect who was using magic or a special weapon, it was just a normal guy with a sword who had defeated him. "Impossible, a human can't compete with me, not a normal human. What is your secret, what is your sword really made of? Answer me, Uzumaki Naruto." Hades shouted with raw rage dripping from every word. He, a god, should not accept such a loss as this, not when some magic had to be at work. This human cheated. "Eh? I mean, you were standing between me and my beloved pet, of course I was going to be strong enough to win. I don't have a secret, I just refuse to lose while something I love is on the line. Anyway, guess this is goodbye then, Hades." Naruto spoke as he took a small orb from his pocket and crushed it in his hand, the orb teleporting him out of the realm of the dead. Hades growled when he recognized the orb, knowing who had allowed this man to come into his realm in the first place to challenge him. Aphrodite. Years later. Venelana Bale. A small child, petite in figure with her body seeming to be at the starting stages of showing puberty. Her brown hair cut to be short to her shoulders and tied up into a bun at the back. She wore a scarlet red dress and she bore 2 bat-like wings from her back that she used to fly around. Currently, one of those wings were injured as her red dress showed rips in it, a steaming wound on her arm that was still freshly bleeding. She was surrounded by a group of angels. By group, she meant she was surrounded by 2 angels and 3 humans wielding swords. She could easily take down the humans, but each of the angels had 4 pairs of wings come from their backs. Either one of them were too much for her right now, she was just a child. "Devil, you've made a mistake trying to form a contract here in the church's territory." The angel's voice was neither angry or hateful, just stating a fact of what she had done that had ended up with her in this situation. She wasn't allowed to try and do what she wanted to do here, tempting humans to hell by forming contracts and taking their souls. She didn't like what she did either, but she had to do it. "Let me go, and I'll never come here again." Venelana kept up a calm facade on the outside, an impressive feat for a child. A hand touched the top of her head. "I'll vouch for the kid." Venelana looked and saw an elderly man, a well-built man that seemed to be in his later years, whisker marks on each cheek, grayed hair that contained some traces of blonde to it, amused blue eyes and a sword with many battle scars on it, as well as a shield that matched it. His very presence though commanded so much respect that the angels who witnessed him arrive seemed to falter slightly. "Who are?" "Naruto Uzumaki, surely you wouldn't become involved with a devil?" the lead angel of the group asked, unsure of what the answer might be. "Naruto?" Venelana asked, unsure of where she had heard that name before. She looked and saw a chipper little fox riding on top of his shoulder, and for some reason she felt like she should know who he was. His name was really important, but for the life of her he seemed more important than just a name. Like a piece of history that her parents had told her about but she hadn't been listening to. Devil, angel, fallen angel, human, the girl is a child. I don't care about her race, but I won't allow anyone to kill a child while I can stop them. Now, you can continue this and fight me, or you can leave." Naruto spoke as he rose his sword, and Venelana saw the sword was easily big enough to require that even most supernatural beings use 2 hands to hold it. This human was wielding such a monster chunk of metal with only a single hand though. The battle scars on the sword was so jagged and worn down that it was amazing that it was even still in one piece. There was a long pause. The angels nodded, and in a flash of light they teleported themselves and the humans with them away from the potential battle. "Sir Naruto, I thank you for the assistance." "Name kid?" "Venelana Bale, daughter of the Bale family Eep." Venelana squeaked when he swung his sword and she felt it swoosh by her before Naruto stabbed the sword into the ground. Shifting position so that he was sitting on the grass with his back against the flat of the blade, he roughly grabbed her by the arm and pulled her to her knees. Sir." Venelana asked as he examined her injured. Should have gotten here sooner, Naruto spoke as he took a small bag around his waist and pulled out some dried up flowers. He shoved a handful in his mouth and started to chew them, turning them into mush in his mouth. Venelana was visibly disturbed when he spat the mess into his hand and started to rub it into her wounds. Light burns you devils, so this hero will help ease the pain a little and support healing. Naruto rubbed the flower's wet remains into her wound some more. She winced but didn't fight back. She stayed with him until he finished treating her before she thanked him and went on her way, leaving him behind to sit on the grass with a cool smile on his face. Why did his name ring a bell with her? Chapter end. Story start. Venelana stood calmly while surrounded. Her body fully grown, breasts larger than humanly normal, her hair down past her neck, and her body overall just the epitome of seduction, barely covered with any decency by her white dress. She calmly looked around as she stood on wood, the rocking wood of a large ship. She stood calm, despite the fact that most people would be anything but calm. Most people could not be calm when on a ship filled with pirates. Captain, it's bad luck to have a woman on board the ship. The first mate of this pirate ship spoke as he, a sickly man, followed behind a strong-looking teenager who wore a red cloak glittering with gold. Green pants with a blue scarf and chainmail for a shirt instead of a regular shirt. When the captain of the ship walked, the crew paid attention. Blue eyes, blonde hair, peach skin, 3 whisker marks on each cheek and a fox that follows him around. Yes, this is him, Venelana thought with a small smile growing on her face as she looked at the man that she recognized by legend and her own memory. It had been several hundred years since she had last seen him in person, but rumors of a man with whisker marks on his cheeks had been resurfacing in the underworld once more. Naruto Uzumaki. A human who challenged gods and won, a hero with no special attributes to his name other than his sheer determination and willpower. As a child she didn't remember who he was, since he had defeated Hades nearly 90 years before she had even been born. She had only learned of who he was after she had returned home and spoken with her mother about the man. Then, after his death, several years later another Naruto Uzumaki was born with the same description as the man who defeated Hades. It's not good luck, but this crew doesn't need something foolish like luck. We're the strongest pirate crew on the 7 seas and she is a beauty. Now men, you can't be so foolish as to deny the fact that having a lady to appreciate on board is a boon. Naruto shouted out to his crew as he gestured to Venelana's raw beauty. He grinned at her before he became serious moments later and looked at her with curious eyes. Speaking of which, what is a woman doing on my ship? Naruto asked her directly. Venelana calmly smiled. I wish to see you Naruto Uzumaki, the man who tamed the ocean and defeated not only Typhon, Charybdis and Scylla, but also killed a kraken. I wish to hire your crew. Venelana spoke as she gestured to the battle trophies taken from each of his victories that were hanging from the side of his ship. Just like the original Naruto Uzumaki, who defeated Hades, this Naruto was also famous for his victories over the supernatural. A hero of the people. He was a pirate who traveled the world, stealing from other pirates and giving their stolen goods back to the people who they stole in from. A pirate who led a crew filled with the men who he saved from the sea, who had been left to die by the evil pirates who destroyed their ships. His name carried weight to it and his soul felt exactly like the man who saved her as a child as well. He was the same, but different. Sir, no boy or woman is to be allowed among us. It's in the pirate's code. The pirate's code is law among us. Boo laws are just guidelines. Woman, can you play an instrument? Naruto asked Venelana with a grin on his face. She blinked in surprise, but she nodded her head anyway. Anyway, the code states any boy or woman seduced may not board the ship. This woman is neither seduced nor boarding the ship disguised. That rule doesn't apply to her and she's going to pay us with her musical skills and gold. Naruto bargained for Venelana, taking command of the deal before she could even offer a deal. She was a little shocked. He didn't allow anyone to make decisions for him, he took all matters onto himself to decide what was for the best. He learned she could play an instrument. He decided that she would entertain the crew by playing for them and he was still going to take her gold. Aye sir. Now, woman, since this is the Sabbath day, the musicians are taking their break, so I expect you to be able to keep the men cheerful with your music. My men work hard for their booty and I expect your booty to keep their spirits up. Naruto pushed a fiddle into her hands, taken from a nearby musician who had gladly gave Awa his instrument for the day. He was so manly. Just like the Naruto Uzumaki that she met as a child, who she had sought to meet again once she learned that he had reincarnated once again. You're so different, but still the same as I remember. People can either do what you say or go against you. You don't offer any options, but your own Venelana started to play the fiddle for the crew to show that she had not been lying about her ability. She only knew high-class music, so the ears of the pirate crew were in for a treat to be sure. Several weeks later. The dead of night. For humans, it was near impossible to see when no moon's light graces the sky, but for pirates who went to sleep when the sun went down and turned out their lights at 8 at night, the soft rocking of the ship and the gentle light of the stars was enough for only Venelana Bale to see where she was going. She could hear several men drinking on deck since they decided to stay up to drink, but the rules stated they couldn't light the candles for such a thing. Captain Naruto was different than she expected as well. He didn't just force his men to work, he worked right alongside them while they worked and kept himself even busier than he kept his crew. As much as she wanted to have some alone time with him to see if she could grow closer to him, he was always so busy with one thing or another. How am I supposed to seduce a man into becoming my husband if I am never alone with him? Venelana asked herself as she looked up at the crow's nest and she saw Naruto sitting there with a bottle of booze in hand, looking up at the sky. She started to climb the ladder up into the crow's nest to join him as the stars started to become covered as storm clouds started to gather more heavily. He glanced down at her when she started to enter the crow's nest with him. He could see her. Venelana, a woman should be sleeping right now. You've worked well today, you've earned a good rest to recover. Naruto spoke as she joined him and saw that he was drinking from his own private stash. It was the only thing he didn't give to his crew. You can see in this darkness? Venelana asked him, noticing that for the first time in weeks she was seeing him without his captain's hat on. His untamed blonde locks danced in the wind and matched the same color as his drink. Naruto chuckled. A man doesn't need to see with his eyes, a real man can see treasure with his heart. Real treasure? Venelana didn't understand what he was talking about there since she didn't have any treasure on her. Man and woman are a pair. It is a man's job to love, protect, and provide for women, just as it is a woman's job to love, care for, and understand man. For a man, there is no greater treasure than a fine woman and for a woman, there should be no greater treasure than a fine man. Naruto gave her his view on the matter. Is that the reason you don't keep any treasure for yourself? Venelana questioned him, since other than his crew keeping some treasure, he himself never kept any of it. It was very odd for a pirate to not show any real desire to keep any treasure. It would make sense though if his opinion on what treasure is different than the normal person's view. She looked at the drink in his hand. This brew is my mother's honeyed mead, her own secret recipe she died when I was a little lad. I make it whenever I can. Naruto took a long swig straight from the bottle before he offered it to her to try out. She blinked in surprise before she took the bottle and tried to think of a way she could politely drink. She could only drink straight from the source since there were no glasses on the ship to drink from and other than wooden cutlery, there were no utensils either. She took a long swig. Ha! It's like liquid fire and it's so sweet. Venelana gasped in surprise when she was hit by such a pleasant aftertaste of sweetness that the flaming hotness of it was completely erased within moments. Her face went from flaming red to normal within moments and she looked as Naruto took the bottle back and finished it off. He showed no reaction to it at all. You're fine. Jonathan went overboard. Naruto jumped into action without a second to even finish what he was saying, he jumped off the edge of the crow's nest and landed in the ocean. Venelana watched him with surprise, seeing him land in the water and swim towards where bubbles were coming up from the surface. She watched as he went under the water and she could feel a strong magic underneath the water as well. The magic that she hadn't noticed in her own distraction. The dragon and a powerful one. Venelana could only be concerned for Naruto since as a human he would have the disadvantage in the water. The magic vanished moments later as the water turned red and Naruto came out of the water with his drunken crew member holding onto him. Naruto holding a dagger in his mouth as he climbed the side of the ship with only a single hand. A water dragon's corpse started to float to the surface of the water as he finished his climb and tossed his crewmen aboard. Venelana clapped her hands. Simply amazing to see in person. Jonathan, you fool, stay away from the edge of the deck when drunk. I'll not lose even a single of my crew to their own foolishness. Go below deck and sleep until you're sober because tomorrow you'd be scrubbing the deck. Naruto lectured his man harshly, showing a stern side to him as well as his kind side. It was an amazing display of the type of captain he was. The man among men. Chapter end. Story start. She failed to secure Naruto as her husband. This time I will get him to take my hand, Venelana thought to herself as she sat in the stands of a stadium, watching as a man was stabbed to death by the horn of a vicious bull. She watched with impassive eyes as another matador had his life stolen away from him by the most vicious bull shown off. She didn't have long. Her parents were expecting her to marry the heir of the Gremory family soon if she couldn't find a man on her own. She hadn't met the heir to the Gremory family yet, though she was sure he was a fine and kind man, but if it were at all possible, she would prefer if she could have a different husband at least for the time that he was alive. If she could be married to Naruto for at least 50 years, she would be happy with that. She would be happy to just have 50 years with him to call as her own, and after that, she would happily satisfy her parents and marry into the Gremory family. As the corpse of the previous matador was removed from the stadium, she saw him. He was young, a teenager who seemed to be only 17 years old at the most. Blue eyes, blonde hair, peach skin, and those whisker marks that were proof of his eternal curse. She could see he wore fine clothing, a golden weaved matador uniform in black and white, the golden parts being over his waist and on his shoulders. A black bandana tied around his forehead as he held a wide red cloth in his right hand and a rapier in his left hand, ready to show off his ability against a bull for the amusement of the crowd. If only these simple humans knew of his other feats, Venelana thought as she saw the bull charge at the young man. He dodged it by barely moving at all, allowing the bull's horn to come within an inch of his skin. He showed off as he gave the bull a light tap with his rapier, slapping its hind end with the sword as it went mad and scurried to turn around to kill him. Naruto just grinned and held his red cloth in front of his waist. Beast, come and meet with Naruto, the man who has slain beasts that put you to shame." Naruto spoke loud enough for the first row of the audience to hear him. Venelana felt herself grow slightly heated when she heard his silken voice. This Naruto had an air of sheer seductiveness to him. From his high class, fine clothing, to the way that he kept his appearance completely show-worthy. He possessed the height of a high-class male's charm, but with that same rugged harshness of a real man as well. He stabbed his rapier into the ground as the bull ran at him. He grabbed the bull by the horn with one hand and forced the bull to change directions with the force of a single arm. The bull ran in a circle, and Naruto repeated the same motion with a skip to his step. He dances with a beast, he considers even a beast below his power to be a dancing partner. This is a man who considers all life, even life he plans on ending, to be precious in its own way. Venelana clapped her hands at the show of respectful disrespect towards the bull. While Naruto toyed with the bull to those watching the dance take place, only Venelana could truly see his goal. He wanted to have fun with the bull, and he wanted the bull to get all the chances it could get to show off its speed and strength. This was his form of respecting the bull as a creature, allowing it to live long enough to show off how dangerous it was. "I won't allow the flames of your life to end so quickly, you're a truly fine beast. Let's dance some more together and connect our hearts as one, my friend." Naruto gave a loud shout to the audience, though he was talking to the bull he faced. He was expected to play up his part, so instead of keeping his thoughts private, he spoke them as a true professional in this field would. Naruto bowed to the bull as it came to a stop and prepared itself for another charge. The bull changed, and Naruto used a single hand to stop the beast in its tracks completely by pushing his palm up against its forehead, between the horns. He started to take steps forward as the beast struggled against him, pushing it backwards unnaturally. The audience lost it completely, cheering him on with a thunderous applause as he showed his completely dominance over the beast he faced down. He showed more speed and power than the brave bull itself, a feat that to normal humans was something to behold. He pushed the bull to the sword in the ground before Naruto put his cloth on the sword's handle and raised his now free hand up. He brought his hand down, and with a roar of pain, the bull lost a horn and ran away from Naruto for the moment. Naruto showed off the bull's horn, ripped from the bull itself, in his hand as he held it up like it was a dagger. "You've killed every honorable warrior you have faced thus far, there would be no truer poetry but for you to die by your own horn. Your death shall be memorable, filled with the same honor I would grant to a human foe." Naruto spoke to the bull as it charged towards him. He charged towards the bull as well. The two collided, and the bull was knocked clear off of its hooves onto its back, with a horn lodged into its neck. It roared out and struggled as it died, much like the men it had killed, and Naruto simply went down and grabbed the horn before he used it to slit the creature's throat with one smooth motion. Down goes the bull, a true hero he is. No, his real heroism comes from his respect for his enemy. He formed a bond with even the beasts he slays, so that he never forgets about them in his heart. He defeats them in a poetic way to ensure that each and every kill he makes is unique and memorable. He doesn't want even the smallest of creatures to be forgotten. Venelana had nearly been moved to tears. Each Naruto was different than the last, but the heart they shared was the same among them all. The inherent kindness for others he had was simply the opposite of her own nature as a devil. It was no lie if she would say that this, more than his looks or reputation, was the biggest reason why she wanted to marry him. Several days later. "So, what brings a lovely lady to my home at this hour?" Venelana was caught, she hadn't even noticed Naruto sitting nearby the front door of his house as he sat nearby a strawberry bush. She saw him, how he escaped her notice was simply amazing, since she could see so clearly at night. She had wanted to pay him a midnight visit in order to try and seduce him into making a bond with her. "Naruto Uzumaki, I wish to speak with you about your exploits. I am writing a book on heroes and would like you to be an entry in that book. Then, please hit my love, for I always have a time for a lovely woman." Naruto spoke gently to her and she shivered when he gave her eyes that to call them bedroom eyes would bring shame to them. The look his eyes gave her alone could send a shiver down her spine and moisten her lions. It was like he was having sex with his eyes. What inspires you to fight the way you do? Venelana asked as she sat down before him and she treated this as if she were actually interviewing him. She was writing a book of sorts if you counted the diary that she kept of her days she got to spend with the different Narutos that she got to meet. Naruto considered her question. Love, you're asking a question I would love to answer. Naruto spoke to her and she had to question something about this. Was it her or did his voice feel like he was having sex with her ears too? His accent was very sensual. I don't have enemies, only brothers and sisters the beasts I slay, they are my brethren. Humankind aren't too different. We seek affection, we seek to survive, we want to breed and become numerous we are the same, we just do it different. As we humans are beasts, I will treat the beasts I face with the same respect I would show any human foe. Naruto spoke gently and fondly of the creatures he had killed. He smiled fondly, very fondly, as he recalled to himself the various different creatures. Including the Hydra you killed. You're very informed, I never told that story to anyone. That multi-headed foe was quite tough, but my love, my true challenge was when I fought and slayed Kurama so you've come home. Naruto stopped what he was saying when a fox that Venelana recognized as the forever companion of each Naruto. It wasn't ever a different fox. The fox that had been reborn by Hades had attained an eternal age and the fox's loyalty to its master ensured that it would always find him when he was reborn. Wherever this fox appeared, a new Naruto would be born soon after. The fox looked at her and with a tilt of its head, a spark of recognition appeared in its eyes. So, do you call every woman love or am I special? I love all women, so all women are my love. Naruto spoke honestly to her once more, a trait that was common among all of the Narutos that she had met. Their honesty with their feelings and emotions, a trait that was less common among the more manly of men. Then Alana shivered again. He was a smooth man, in this aspect, he was very different than the other Narutos that she had met before. The ancient warrior had been strict and kind, the pirate captain had been soft but harsh, and the Matador Naruto that she was speaking with was seductive and romantic. She smiled to herself when she realized that even after hundreds of years, this was a man that she could keep learning things about. Hades' curse. He could never enter the afterlife, but his soul had to go somewhere, so eventually he would always be reborn. He had learned later on that you could tell where he would be reborn by following where the fox Kurama, who was connected to his soul, would go. Kurama would stay at the current Naruto's grave for hundreds of years if needed and would only leave the grave when a new Naruto was going to be born. I see you're quite the womanizer then. Venelana teased gently. She didn't mind this too much either. I would never lay a hand on a woman or ever strike her down. A woman is a precious giver of life. When I need to do battle against a woman, I do not defeat her with my fists, I defeat her in a contest of wills and stamina. Naruto came onto her as his fingers traced her lower lip, his other hand gently pushing her hand into the grass. She smiled and allowed herself to be pushed down to the ground. You're very forward. You are a woman I find appealing, of course I will want to seduce you. I'm just honest with myself and you just say no and I will quit. Naruto leaned down on top of her as her clothes started to come off, be it her hands or his at this point, she didn't know or care that much. She was getting exactly what she wanted out of this. He stopped and closed his eyes though. You're stopping? Venelana questioned him when he started to stand up. I apologize my love, but I can't continue further here. A fine woman should only be enjoyed under the right conditions. Out here, on the grass, where is the beauty or poetry in that? I apologize, I nearly showed you a great disrespect. I will walk you to where you are staying. Naruto told her with self-shame in his voice. He stuck true to a very strict code of conduct, he would only do battle in honorable and poetic ways, be it in blood sport or in bed. She could admire that trait in him, his unwillingness to compromise on his ideals. When will we continue this? Venelana asked him, and he looked away. My love, I can't bring myself to face you when I very nearly stained your beauty by doing battle with you in this horrid place. I, as a man, cannot bear to bed a woman who I have shamed so heavily. This, my love, is where we will part ways. Naruto spoke to her with his voice dripping with such sweet honey. She didn't even mind being rejected that much, his words were just so flattering and smooth, it was like somebody dripped honey into her very brain. She hoped the next Naruto would be born before she got married to the Gremory heir. Chapter end. Story start. Surzich's Gremory. Son of Venelana Gremory, formerly Venelana Bale, and her husband Viaticus Gremory. He inherited only a slight amount of his mother's looks, inheriting far more from his father, from his bright red hair to his bright blue eyes as well. He was a young man, a teenager in his earlier years who wore a fancy white suit very similar to what his own father wore. Mother's diary. So she herself has met with Naruto Uzumaki multiple times. He's a legend who defeated even the god Hades in battle, but why isn't he known to history? Surziches thought to himself as he turned a page in his mother's old diary, hundreds upon hundreds of years old, as she captured her memories of her various meetings with the different Narutos that she had met. Naruto Uzumaki, a legendary figure who didn't exist in even a single history book that he could find in the underworld. Each reincarnation of the man did great things, according to the diary, feats that humans shouldn't be capable of. Not a normal human at least, the kind of humans that he learned were the type to be powerful. No magic. No sacred gear. No special weapons. So, Surziches was it. What do you want? The man sitting with his back against a tree, staring him down with some amusement as he spun a gun around the tip of his finger. He was grinning, and Surziches looked at the pictures his mother drew in the diary, and he saw the same piercing blue eyes, golden blonde hair, and most importantly the triple whisker marks on each of his cheeks. The true confirmation that he was dealing with a reincarnation of the legendary hero. No, the small fox that was sitting on his lap was an even bigger indication of his identity. I want to ask you if you know the name Venelana Bale. Surziches asked as he stared down Naruto, a man who appeared in his late teens. The man paused. Can't say I've ever heard of her. Sounds like a woman's name though. Tell me boy, take a seat first. Naruto kicked an empty wood bucket to Surziches with an expecting gaze for him. Surziches took the bucket and flipped it before he sat on it. Surziches gulped. Naruto Uzumaki, the sheriff. Ex-sheriff, decided to quit and spend my remaining time on this world traveling with my boys here. Kurama and old Bucky. Naruto pet the fox on the head and he tapped his horse on its rear end. He had a grin on his face as he spoke, and Surziches had to wonder what he could be referring to when he mentioned his remaining time, since that seemed odd to point out. He just grinned as Kurama enjoyed the attention it was getting. Surziches nodded. I need your help. My people are in a civil war right now, and I'm trying to gather people to help my side fight. Surziches spoke honestly as he tried to gauge Naruto's reaction to his words, and Naruto didn't seem interested. Odd. Naruto just grinned. So you're not human then, cause in this world there ain't no civil war going on. You some kind of devil are ya? Maybe a fallen angel then, cause I don't see you coming to me for help otherwise. Naruto gestured to him with a smirk. Surziches was physically taken back. How? Your guess, what do you base that off of? Surziches had to find out how this man was able to learn that information so quickly. Those letters on your cuff, the language of demons for sure. Your clothes, not a speck of dust on them, even in the middle of this desert. It's not human. Anyway, I'm well aware of your kind. Naruto explained as he lifted up his shirt and showed a massive scar that covered half of his entire torso. He grinned as he looked down at his own scar before he glanced at Surziches and noticed his shocked expression. The devil. Not a devil, your kind, the supernatural. A beast named Trihixa did this to me. I was asked to fight the beast while the Lord sealed it. Naruto spoke as he dropped his shirt down, covering his wound as Surziches coughed into his hand. The awkwardness in the air was getting to him, and Surziches looked around at Naruto's camp. He only had enough to travel, not to survive. Trihixa? Don't worry about it, the beast is gone for good unless some fool unseals it. It destroyed me lung, a kidney, half my stomach, most of my liver, and it damaged my heart. I don't have much time left anymore, and I don't want to spend it fighting. Naruto chuckled to himself, noticing the guilt building inside of Surziches. Why the down face there, kid? Naruto questioned him with that same grin on his face. You're a real hero, and you're dying all alone. You did something amazing, but nobody will ever know about your sacrifice. You're going to suffer and die like this. Surziches could feel nothing but pity and sorrow for this man, who had given everything to save people from what he could only imagine was a horrible beast. He didn't know what this Trihixa was, but the name alone sent a shiver down his spine. To hear this man gave so much and was still willing to die alone was just saddening for him. A hero doesn't do things because we want the fame or recognition. A hero is the one who does something because it's the right thing to do. My life is a small price to pay if it means many others can be safe anyway. As long as one person will remember my name, then I can be happy. Sorry I can't help you with your war, boy. Naruto stated as he pointed his gun at a tree and shot the stem of an apple, causing it to fall down into his hand. He tossed it over the Surziches, who caught it by reflex. Can't eat with my body the way it is anymore, so take it and head on out. Naruto gestured for Surziches to leave his camp. Surziches looked at Naruto with respect in his gaze. You won't die alone, please. Tell me the stories about your life so that I can always remember you. Surziches pleaded with the man in front of him. Naruto smirked. Fine, but my story isn't a happy one. You seem like a good kid. Several days later. Surziches' suit wasn't pure white anymore. The cuffs of his suit were stained by dirt and mud as he walked through the halls of Gremory Castle, his eyes puffy and red. He hadn't bathed in days, nor had he had a decent meal in that amount of time either. He could see servants all around the castle getting a new suit ready for him, but he was a man on a mission as he went towards the location where he could feel his parents at. "Lord Serziches, please allow me to get a change of clothes for you and clean your suit." "No thank you, this dirt is a badge of honor, I would like to wear it for a little while longer. I have need to speak with my mother and father." Serziches waved the slave off gently before he turned and walked through the great door to the throne room. There they were. "Serziches, you've been gone for days and you come home dressed in filthy clothes, I assume you've got a reasonable answer for us." His father, Zeodicus Gremory, spoke with an expectant but not angry look to his face. Then Alana's eyes went to her diary at Serziches' waist, her eyes narrowing. "I met him." "I see, and how was he?" Then Alana asked with a small smile forming on her face when she realized why Serziches had been gone for so long. She should have known, while she could no longer seek out Naruto for herself, now that she was a married woman, she couldn't stop her child from seeking out a hero. Zeodicus seemed confused. He was more than I was expecting, he was different but so very much the same as in your book. I'm ashamed I couldn't meet him sooner and that I could only face him in his final moments. Despite my short time with him, I'll carry the lessons and stories he told me for the rest of my life, he is a hero worthy of that much. Serziches bowed to his mother as if he were updating her on a status report. Then, she did something he had never heard from her before and she did it with a hand slightly covering her mouth. She giggled like a young girl. Then Alana, who is this he? Zeodicus asked his wife with confusion. Naruto Uzumaki, the man I chased after before marrying you, though many have forgotten his legend by now. Then Alana spoke sadly, since his name had been pretty much stricken from history by this point. She didn't know why people did this and it hurt her to know such a great man was having his legacy destroyed, but she could take comfort in the fact her son had lived to see his greatness in person. Zeodicus nodded his head, neither jealous nor upset at the news. "I see the name does ring a bell, though I can't quite remember what he was famous for, the defeat of the god Hades cursed to forever reincarnate." Zeodicus spoke unsurely, since it had been so many hundreds of years since he heard of those legends, he just couldn't remember if he was accurate or not. Serziches frowned deeply. The hero who would only ever suffer. How could he help this hero know peace? Chapter end. Story start. Serziches, this place is pretty weird, are you sure we're going to find somebody important in a hollow mountain of all things? Serziches frowned to himself. The Devil's Civil War had been over for a little bit of time now and he and several of his allies had been crowned by the new Devil faction to be the new Four Satans. With he himself as being now known as Serziches Lucifer, a name that he had earned for himself with his power and the contribution he showed in the war itself. Yet, throughout that entire war, I could never Naruto's next reincarnation until today, and to think he was using this type of location as a base. Most Narutos, according to my mother, lived their lives in the sunlight and fame, becoming great heroes who had legends about them. This Naruto is different. Serziches saw that the stone pillars holding up the hollow mountain's hallways from the inside were all covered with steel pipes and machinery that was of a level that human and devil society had not yet reached. It was unbelievable and he couldn't make head or tails of any of it. Serziches Lucifer. Ajuka Beelzebub. Palbium Asmodeus. Ooh, this stuff is so cool. Also Seraphol Leviathan. This tech is far above anything in the human world I have ever seen. It would take me at least 4 centuries to produce anything even close to this level. Ajuka stated as he gazed at all dream tech he could never dream of at the moment. He wanted to record everything that he saw, but according to Serziches, there was a legendary figure hidden deep inside of the mountain. To think that this level of machinery exists, this tech isn't using coal or steam as a power source to produce power. Fascinating. Ajuka gushed a little when he tried to open up a pipe and he saw a glowing purple substance rushing through the pipes. The pipes repaired themselves. Technology that could self-repair itself as well, using its own power source, absolutely amazing to say the least. No security at all for such a high-tech place, not even a single soldier. Falbium rubbed the back of his bald head suspiciously, keeping an eye out for any traps. Serziches groaned a little when he heard metal footsteps. Well, that settles the security issue. I don't sense any life in this hallway other than us. Serziches looked around and he saw a figure approaching them from behind. Ooh, oh, cool armor. Seraphol looked at the metallic figure approaching them. Its entire body was made of machinery and it had blue armor plates on it, it even carried a Japanese katana on it. Its blue armor had the name Tiki on it and it walked towards them with an intelligent sense of purpose. Ajuka wanted to study it. Serziches charged up some magic before he formed a black energy and shot it at the security thing that was following them. Its chest opened up and his magic attack was sucked into a hole inside of its chest before it closed its chest and its eyes started to glow red before turning blue. It raised its sword up and part of the handle opened up and coated the blade with the same magic that Surzich's had just used. Analyzing finished. Surzich Grimory's magic acquired, applying to weapon sword of destruction mode activated. Tiki raised its blade of destruction up, having coated the very sword it used in Surzich's own magic, much to his shock. He summoned more of his own magic, greater amounts, and he shot it at Tiki. Magic analyzed Tiki defense, power of destruction absorption shield. Tiki created a shield of pure energy around its body that absorbed all of Surzich's magic just as quickly as he had formed it. I see, so it can absorb attacks, replicate them, and create a shield capable of completely negating those types of attacks. This Tiki not only has complete immunity to your power of destruction, but it is capable of producing power of destruction as well, and it has enough control of it to apply it to its sword. Ajuka analyzed the Tiki machine as it rushed towards them, and with the skill of a master swordsman it spun its blade and nearly cut Surzich's head off. Okay, so what I'm hearing, I can't beat this thing. You know, it's really useful to explain how useless I am right now. Surzich's, who had attacked Tiki, was the only person who was being attacked by the machine at this point. He dodged every attack that it threw at him before the machine was frozen in place as ice magic completely covered it. Surzich's looked at Serafal, who nodded to him, a thumbs up. Gotcha. A second Tiki walked out from around the corner and it walked over towards the ice that encased the first Tiki robot. There is more of them. Ajuka was extremely excited now. Building one machine masterpiece was one thing, but building two of them showed a level of skill and craftsmanship that humans shouldn't possess. Tiki number 2 opened its chest up and sucked the magic out of the ice vanishing and freeing Tiki number 1 from its cold prison. That's not good for us. Surzich's mentioned as Falbium weighted their options in his head. Tiki number 2 fully absorbed the ice magic that Serafal used before its sword was coated in a layer of ice as well. Analyzing finished. Serafal Citri's magic acquired, applying to weapon ice magic sword activated. Tiki number 2 finished analyzing Serafal's magic and replicated it as well. That's really bad for us, right? They even realized what our birth names were. They might have absorbed out memories throughout magic. Ajuka now realized, no matter how cool these machines were, they were in some serious danger as well. He realized it further when he noticed that 2 more Tiki machines were coming into the area. There is one for each of us, and that means these machines can only. Data sharing. Serafal Citri's magic acquired Tiki number 1, stated as it and Tiki number 2 shared the data that they had collected with each other. Data sharing. Surzich Grimory's magic acquired Tiki number 2 commented as well. Or, they aren't limited to absorbing one ability each and can share their experience with each other. While each one can only learn one ability, it can share its learned ability with the other machines, so those 2 machines have the combined skills and abilities of Surzich's and Serafal. Falbium stated with a grim frown. That meant that neither Surzich's or Serafal would be able to fight either of these robots, seeing as both of their abilities were reliant on them being wizard-type fighters. They fought using magic and spells as their primary fighting ability, and while neither were physically weak, they had no weapons. These machines had weapons that used their own abilities against them, meaning that these machines were able to take either of them out. Not only that, but if we show our magic, those 2 Tiki will steal our powers and share them, meaning we can do nothing but fight with our hands, or these Tiki. Magical energy analyzed. Falbium Glaciolabola's finished sword of absolute defense activated. Tiki number 3's sword glowed with an orange aura to it and its entire body glowed the same color. Data sharing activated. Tiki number 3 stated as it shared its data with the other Tiki in the area. So we lose, right? Serafal asked the other Satans. Magical energy analyzed. Ajuka Astra sword of Kankara formula activated. Data sharing activated. Tiki number 4 stated as it stole Ajuka's abilities and powers as well after finishing analyzing the magic inside of his own body. Yeah, we lose. Each of these Tiki has all of our abilities now. Not to mention they are immune to all of our abilities as well, meaning even a single one of these Tiki is now capable of killing all 4 of us in battle. These Tiki are absolute monsters, yeah, and you're wrong about there being 4 of them. I built 1000 Tiki in total. They serve as a security system to prevent anyone from causing any damage to my base. Surzich's eyes widened when he saw familiar blonde hair and blue eyes, not to mention 3 whisker marks on each cheek. He was a young teen as well, but over his body he wore a black suit with white armor and red machinery over that armor. His armor, despite having a German accent, was that of a Japanese man in appearance. His armor shared similarities with a Tiki, while his armor was built with even more complexity than the Tiki themselves were. Do you build these? Ajuka asked with his eyes widened. A human built machines like these? Naruto Uzumaki. Surzich's stated as he took a step forward to the young man who had snuck up on them when they were distracted. He looked so similar to the Naruto he had met when he was much younger, only this Naruto had slightly less muscle definition. He had that same confidence grin on his face though. Tiki, back down, the threat has been neutralized. Naruto told his security and they started to walk away, their swords deactivating as they did so. So what brings guests to my research base? Naruto asked them as he leaned up against the wall. Seraphol was looking at him with stars in her eyes. You built these things. You must be a super genius. Even smarter than Ajuka. She isn't wrong. Ajuka admitted when Surziches and Falbium glanced at him for his reaction, since this was the first time either of them had ever met somebody smarter than their ally. A man who could build machines capable of defeating all four of them by stealing and neutralizing their powers, unheard of by nature. And that is quick of you, Naruto Uzumaki, to assume that we've already been defeated. Ajuka mentioned with a confident smile of his own. Naruto held up his hand. The power of destruction appeared in it before it was replaced by ice magic, and then his armor glowed orange before his own powers started to appear in the air around Naruto's body. The Tiki are all linked to my armor, so as of right now, I have all of your powers, and Naruto opened the chest piece of his armor before a blue light shined over the four Satans and they collapsed to their knees instantly. You can't use your powers for the next 24 hours as well. You see, this machine in my armor allows me to negate the activation of powers that my armor has. Since my armor has all of your powers now, none of you can use your powers, so the threat you could have posed to my base is now completely nullified. You are no threat. Naruto explained the futility of them trying to appear tough or superior in any way to him. Ajuka looked at Naruto with sheer respect and nothing more or less. I see, since you have ice magic you can negate all ice magic, not just Seraphol's. Based on how you explained that. All of the skills we have, you can completely negate them in all people who use them, so the only opponents who can face you are those who have no powers. That armor of yours can completely defeat any and all supernatural beings. Ajuka analyzed the statements that Naruto had made, and Falbium seemed more alarmed by his words, looking towards Naruto with a dead serious gaze of worry. That meant that as of right now, this young teenage boy could go into the underworld and slaughter absolutely all of their entire species with his army of Tiki, stealing all of the powers of their race and neutralizing them. Then, he could steal all of the abilities of all of the other races as well and steal the abilities of sacred gears at some point. Eventually, the armor he was wearing had the potential to attain all abilities in the world as well as the ability to negate all abilities in the world. Whoever wore that armor and possessed a Tiki army could rule the world itself with nobody able to oppose them. Naruto, do you remember me? Surziches asked as he stepped forward and pointed to himself. Should I? Naruto asked him with a raised eyebrow. No, of course not. Sorry for asking a weird question. Surziches seemed truly saddened by the answer, enough that Seraphol put a hand on his shoulder and comforted him with a firm grip. Her gaze was one of pity because she could hear the hurt in his voice. We, devils, have just finished a civil war and our population has hit record low numbers. Ajuka has created a system to reincarnate humans into devils and we came to offer you a chance to reincarnate into one of our peerages. Surziches offered Naruto the chance to become the very first person to ever be reincarnated into a devil. This was all Surziches could think to do. If Naruto became a devil, he would only need to be reincarnated once every few 100,000 years instead of whenever he lived out his human lifespan. So the legend of Naruto Uzumaki could live on instead of die with him as it had always done. No thanks. His answer shocked them. But devils live for a super long time, think of the amount of research you could do. You can learn everything in the universe. Ajuka was the first to try and convince him. There was so much he could learn from this man. I don't want that though. When I made the Tiki, I realized that with them, I could easily acquire all magic, abilities, sacred gears, and master all of the powers of all of the supernatural species on this world. With them, in less than a year I could learn all things there is to know, but then what will I do with the rest of my life? Naruto asked them with a smile on his face and he looked towards his armor with a hateful smile. This armor is just a big cheat code and the Tiki are tools that break the flow of nature. Your abilities aren't the only ones I have already, if I want I can. They all blinked when Naruto vanished from in front of them and they blinked again when they noticed that he was in front of them again. He was holding a bleeding shark tooth. What? Stop time whenever I want. Just now, I stopped time for 1 week and walked to the ocean before I ripped the tooth from a shark and walked back here. Time has been stopped for an entire week, but to you it is like no time has passed at all. Naruto explained to them as he tossed the bloody shark tooth on the ground. They all were shaken from that information. So when you say you could learn everything in a year, I can stop time and spend a full year gathering all abilities that exist in this world. Then, but the time I start time again, I will have attained everything. Naruto finished for him as he crossed his arms bitterly. This armor is called Elysium because with it, I can rule over all things as I stand atop a throne of heaven. Let me explain something to you. Naruto started explaining to them once more. He vanished. He reappeared. You see, right now I have all abilities of the entire devil species. I froze time for 3 months and went into the underworld with the magic spells I got from you. I traveled to the homes of all devils and analyzed all of their magical powers. As of right now, I've unlocked all of the secrets and abilities of your species, and just as easily, I could wipe your whole species out in the blink of an eye. Naruto made a show of blinking his eyes just to explain how easily he could destroy them all. That was it. They could see why he was angry with himself for creating such an armor, since it took all of the fun out of everything. That kind of power, it's absurd. How is it possible you created something like this? Falbium asked with a shocked tone of voice. Even as lazy as he was, he could see just how horrifying this armor's existence was. I'm a fool, so I wanted to see if I could change my stupidity. I spent years creating this armor for the sake of showing the world that Naruto Uzumaki was no fool. I put so much work, blood, and tears into this armor, but only after creating perfection did I realize that I hated perfection. I loved my hard work, I loved the effort it took to make new and exciting things. It was never about the goal. It was always about the journey, Naruto explained to them as he started to take off some of the pieces of the armor. You're taking off such awesome power. Serafo was just confused. I allowed you four to follow Kurama into my base because I already had my machines analyze your brains and figured out that you were harmless. I've been alone with just Kurama for so long, I wanted to at least teach somebody this lesson. I'm going to erase all of the magic stored in this armor and hide it away before I start anew. I want you four to teach others this lesson. Naruto explained as he started to walk away. Surziches smiled. Naruto had attained something that could allow him to rule over the entire world, but he chose to get rid of that power and focus on achieving a different dream. This was the same respectable man that he had come to know before. Ajuka. Ajuka lowered his head to the floor, much to the shock of Falbium and Serafo, who had never seen the man bow so humbly before. Naruto Uzumaki, please allow me to become your student. There is so much I could learn from you. Then go earn it yourself, take your desire and turn it into a goal, and then strive for that goal with everything you have, but never take any shortcuts or cheat. When you cheat to reach the goal, it will be the most hollow victory of your life. The Tiki will escort you out and give you back your ability to use magic. Naruto waved them off as he started to walk off again. They were silence. Surziches. Yes, Ajuka. Surziches asked the man, who stood up and looked him in the eye. I understand why you wanted us to find him. He had no special powers, abilities, and he was just a human, but that human through sheer guts and determination did something I would have thought impossible. Thanks to him, I'm inspired to work harder than ever to perfect the evil P system. Ajuka nodded to his friend with respect. Falbium frowned slightly. He needed to make sure that nobody ever learned that this place existed or that there would be a hidden armor that could allow a person to become a truly perfect being. We couldn't get him to join us in this life, but I'm sure eventually he will reincarnate into a person that will want to join us, Surziches said with a gripped fist. One day he would free Naruto of the curse that was placed on him. Story start. Jiang Uzumaki. Jiang Uzumaki. Jiang Uzumaki. Again, I'm simply amazed, Serafo thought to herself as she remained in disguise, using transformation magic to make herself look male to those around her. Her long hair shortened to a medium-length wildness, her massive chest downsized as she wore the army uniform of the Chinese to allow her to fit in with everyone who was cheering. Hello, I'm from a different group and transferred in today. Why is everyone so happy to see this man? Serafo whispered to the nearest soldier. Naruto Uzumaki, the legendary Jiang who has never allowed even a single warrior to fall in battle under his command. Despite being only 15, he took command of this unit and he had led us into battle 100 times against the demons. Serafo nodded her head as she saw the man riding a black horse with a flag behind the horse, wearing a black uniform with red wooden plates of armor. Just as with the last Naruto she met, this man had blonde hair, blue eyes, and 3 whisker marks on his cheeks as well. The handle of his sword was an odd light purple color though, and he was grinning as he rode towards his tent. He strikes an imposing figure, and he doesn't seem to remember his last life this time either. According to Surzich and Surzich's mother, his reincarnations always bear the same name, no matter what region he is reborn in, and there is Kurama. Serafo looked and saw a small orange fox that was sitting on the butt of the horse, sleeping behind Naruto with a comfortable expression. The Chinese's special anti-demon unit, unknown to the public, who fight the supernatural behind the scenes with their use of anti-monster weapons. She was sent this time because she was the best at controlling her magic and keeping her power hidden to a level humans couldn't detect her. Not to mention her mastery over sleep magic was the best out of all of the Satans, allowing her to safely enter enemy territory without risk of being discovered. This Naruto was different. While all other Narutos killed supernatural creatures, they did so in defense of other humans. This Naruto was a part of a military fighting force, meaning he killed them as part of a job. Among the four Satans, she was also the best at dealing with political matters, which was why she dealt with dealings with other factions. "I smell a woman among the men," Naruto spoke as he sniffed the air from his horse, right as he passed by Serafal. She blinked. "How? And her scent reeks of evil as well. Men, be on the lookout for a possible devil woman among us. If you even so much as get a hint of their location, report to my tent instantly. You, new soldier, the Emperor informed me you would be arriving today." Naruto pointed toward Serafal, who hid the surprised look on her face. She gave a Chinese salute to the man and bowed to him. "Follow me to my tent, we have much to talk about," Naruto stated to her as he got off of his horse and walked into his tent. Serafal's eyes widened. She didn't have much choice other than to follow after Naruto though, while the men in the squad all started to disperse and take care of their other duties. She walked into the tent and she didn't see Naruto at first. She felt him. She felt a swift attack hit her in the middle of her ribs and her transformation dropped instantly before she saw a flash of fists that hit both of her shoulders. She was forcefully turned around when Naruto grabbed her wrist and jammed his fingers into the side of her neck. She collapsed onto her knees. He knew Serafal was unable to speak as she held her neck with her hands. Time to teleport out since she had been discovered. "Based on your smell, I figured you were a female devil. I've attacked points on your body that will paralyze your ability to use magic. Right now, your body is incapable of using magic." Now Naruto pushed his foot into her back and forced her down onto her hands and knees. He already had his sword drawn and pointed at her neck, the top of his blade lightly touching the base of her spine. "Your eyes lack killing intent, so you haven't to cause trouble. Speak now and explain your situation. Your answer will change your fate," Naruto explained to her, taking absolute authority over her fate. She couldn't use magic. He had her in a vulnerable position with her body now situated in a spot where it would be impossible for her to resist without endangering her life. "I sent on behalf of the underworld to speak with you about your future. I have no intention of causing trouble." Serafal didn't have the chance to look him in the eyes because of her position. "They sent a woman into a man's camp. Your race doesn't seem to know how to show respect. I don't have any wish to slay a woman, devil or not, so tell me the truth this time or your gender won't protect you," Naruto demanded of her harshly, his patience with her drawing thin. "I am Serafal Leviathan, and we of the underworld wish to extend an invitation to you, Naruto Uzumaki, to live among us." Serafal spoke with her eyes closing before she opened them when the tip of his sword was removed from her neck. She was able to return and look him in the eyes. "Your offer is genuine, but my question is why?" Naruto asked her as he pulled her back into a standing position, allowing her to turn on her own. He glanced into her eyes and searched them, so she kept her eyes open to see if he could see her real intentions. Serafal puffed her chest out with pride. "We devils have formed a treaty with heaven and the fallen angels. We are going to divide the territories where there exists any form of Christianity. To do that, we need to show each of the highest forms of government our existence so that we can equally divide up territories. By forming an treaty, we have sworn to not cause any harm to humans. You are China's greatest supernatural general, so we want to convince you of our pure intentions." Serafal puffed her chest out in pride. It had been part of her idea to evenly divide up all of the territories to make sure that all of the species were able to interact with humans properly without getting in the way of each other's species. Asia had a small Christian population, but it was there, so they needed to make sure to get into contact with the human leaders of this region as well. While meeting and getting to Naruto was the primary objective of the Satans, they couldn't just neglect their other responsibilities. "You're telling the truth, Leviathan. Very well, I'll speak with the Emperor." "You mean your father?" Serafal asked with a tilted head since she was aware that he was the hidden son of the Emperor. The son of the man and one of his concubines, hidden from the public since he was not going to be allowed to inherit the throne. Naruto glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. "You're an interesting woman. I assume that my lodgings in the underworld will be taken care of?" Naruto questioned her, since if she knew that information, the likelihood of his father allowing him to leave increased to 100% since he didn't want their relationship to ever become public. His father had assigned him to this squad in order to get him killed. He had become a general, not because of the fact he was the emperor's son, but instead because of his love of his nation, refused to allow him to betray it by doing a bad job. He had no respect for his father personally, but he didn't have a desire to allow innocents to die because of his own resentment either. If this woman made it known to his father that she was aware of their relationship, then his father would send him to the underworld with the orders to not come back. Banishment from his nation. Several of the Satans want to let you stay with them, and the Gremory family extend a welcome into their home. "I'll stay with you then, Satan Leviathan, seeing as you extended the hand of invitation to me." Naruto grinned at her. She nodded her head with bright eyes. Surziches would be so jealous. Years later. Okay, so maybe years ago her statement was a little incorrect, turns out that it wasn't Surzich's who was going to be jealous of her. At first, it was indeed Surzich's jealous that Naruto chose to stay with her. As time went on though, a different person became jealous of her when something happened. Marriage. Mama, why did Papa die? Her daughter, Shui Citri, was standing next to her holding her hand as she looked at the statue of her father that stood proudly in the castle courtyard. Her daughter inherited her looks, but she had her father's skin and 2 whisker marks on each of her cheeks. She had long straight hair like her, and she had very large breasts despite her father's short height. She wore Chinese robes that her father had gave her, and despite the fact that she was 54 in human years, she was still a very young devil. He wanted to die human, he didn't want to become a devil, and I will respect his wishes even now. To him, he was born human, lived as human, and he wanted to let the circle come to an end with him being human. Serafal spoke with tears in her eyes, snot dripping from her nose. The memorial service had already been over and done with only Ajuka, Surzich's, then Alana and her husband showing up. Naruto's existence was still a secret from the rest of the underworld and they still couldn't figure out who was keeping him a secret. Somebody was making sure to erase all records of him. Even rumors of her being married to him were changed to make it seem like she had been married to a fellow devil and not a human. When Papa comes back he won't be my Papa anymore. Shui Citri spoke with a small smile growing on her face. Right, her daughter had an unhealthy attachment to her father, wanting to marry him all the way to the current day. She never grew out of that phase, to the point she had tried to seduce her father several times behind her back. It's disgusting for a woman to be attracted to her family, Shui. Serafal lectured her daughter. She sneezed instantly. Why did she feel like she was going to regret those words later? Chapter end. Story start. Surzich's Lucifer. Michael. Azazel. It was a rare event for the big leaders of the devils, angels, and fallen angels to be meeting up with each other. It was an even rarer event for them to be meeting up out of uniform, with Surzich's wearing a normal white suit, Michael wearing casual priest robes, and Azazel wearing a black suit in opposition to Surzich's white suit. The rarest part of their meeting. It was accidental. What are the odds that you two are here for a drink? Surzich's asked the 2 men, who were leaders of his enemies' armies. They were in Ireland, home of the brew, outside of a tavern that looked battle-worn. The odds were low, but he was very hopeful that they had not noticed the small orange fox that roamed in and out of the tavern. I didn't think angels could drink. In moderation, it's a sin to overdo it though. The blood of Christ is a holy thing, so one must not forsake alcohol in its nature. Michael explained to Surzich's. Azazel raised a hand. So, we all here for Naruto, right? Since he has been reborn, and even though history has forgotten about him, none of us have. Azazel was the icebreaker, explaining for each other why they all knew they were here. Despite the humans being in a world war amongst each other right now, that didn't affect the fact that Naruto had been reborn once more. Surzich's seemed a little surprised Azazel knew of Naruto at all, and he looked towards Michael, who showed no surprise. Yes, I am here to meet with him as thanks for a great service he did for us many lives ago, we planned on trying to end his curse. Michael told the truth, since he had little choice other than to try and start a fight he wouldn't win. He saw a spark of relief in Surzich's eyes, and the devil extended a hand out to him. Likewise, I'm glad to see we. I just need his DNA to get into that old lab of his, I tried breaking in to steal some of that tech, but I couldn't get by the barrier. So grave robbing. Michael and Surzich's summarized the wrongness of what Azazel was doing, since the man was simply trying to get his hands on powerful machinery. Even decades into the future, that level of tech that the other Naruto had built was still so far into the future, it would be hundreds of years before humans could even begin to match his level of tech. They sighed. Michael looked at Surzich's with a raised eyebrow, since even a devil had more morals than a fallen angel's was a little surprising to him personally. Boys, move out of the way, coming through with a heavy load now. Can't have you 3 buffoons blocking the door. Oh, sorry. Surzich's moved out of the way before a familiar mess of blonde hair passed by him with familiar whisker marks and blue eyes. He and Michael both blinked in surprise before Azazel whistled in appreciation. Wow, rugged handsome. This Naruto had a tan around his arms and neck and currently he was shirtless and carrying a massive barrel over his shoulders. He had several scars on his chest, with the barrel he was holding sloshing with heavy booze. He even had a mug filled with a drink in his other hand as he kicked open the door to walk into the tavern. Oh. I brought the drink, tonight we all get drunk. Tomorrow, we all throw up. There might be a war going on, but that is no excuse for us to forget to have some fun. Naruto shouted out to the patrons of the tavern as he walked into it. The 3 leaders followed after him and saw the patrons seem to light up when they saw him. Now which one of you lily-livered pansies thinks he can outdrink me? I won't consider this night over until I've drinking 10 of you under and over the table 5 times over. Naruto roared in laughter as he slammed the barrel down onto the counter. Sweet Lord Naruto, this barrel filled with some legendary brew. Aye, you're damn right it is, made it myself. You better appreciate it, now, I'll be accepting all bets. Anyone who outdrinks me can hire me for whatever they want. Naruto drained his mug and tossed it across the table to the tavern owner, who poured him a fresh much. Naruto was slid the mug back and started to drink from it with a loud laugh. Azazel stepped forward. I'll take you up on that, I'm a bit of a drinker myself. Azazel spoke with a cocky smirk. Naruto returned it. Well then pretty boy, let's see how you compete. I've only had 4 pints today, so that is a fair handicap for you. Naruto sat down at a table and the tavern started to gather around to watch as their heaviest drinker went up against the newcomer. There was a pause among Surziches and Michael, who both watched Azazel sit down. Not going to stop him? Michael questioned Surziches. It's not my job to do that and I want to see where this goes. Surziches wanted to see how well Azazel would do. -2 hours later. Azazel was passed out on the floor, his face a heavy shade of red. He's not even phased, he completely drunk this alcoholic under the table. Surziches kicked Azazel while he was down and he looked to see a drinking and grinning Naruto, holding Azazel's wallet while inspecting the contents of it. The crowd cheered for Naruto. That's our hero. A hero, so tell me Mr. Uzumaki, what have you done that has made you a hero? Michael sat down at the table, not where Azazel had been sitting, and decided to strike up a conversation with Naruto. They don't know about how he killed an entire invading Nazi force who nearly destroyed our village with tanks and guns, using only a knife and a stick. These men are ignorant to how he swam upstream, carrying a boulder on his back to fix the destroyed dam. They're unaware of how our hero went out to sea on a boat and brought back enough fish to feed the village for 2 weeks. He didn't even charge us for the fish, he just gave it to us. I see, that is an impressive heroism, you've certainly earned that title. Michael spoke gently, while Surziches sat down. Surziches was smiling now that he was able to hear some more about the current Naruto. Naruto slid his own drink across the table to Surziches and beckoned for another drink to be brought to him. Surziches drank politely. So? Naruto stopped him with a finger before he started to drink from his new mug, and both the supernatural leaders were expected to be silent while he was drinking. Naruto slammed his mug down with a mighty sigh of enjoyment before he looked at the two. Well, it's not like I'm trying to be a hero or anything. When the Germans came to invade, I had to do what I did or others would die. When the dam burst, the hole was in the middle of it, the only way to plug the hole was to swim the boulder to the middle. I can't sit back and let my village starve, so I bought a boat to go and get the food needed to keep it from happening. Naruto explained away his own deeds as less heroic than he himself thought them to be. Surziches smiled proudly. You're exactly as I thought you would be. No, I'm serious, a man doesn't sit back and do nothing when he can protect his home. This village is my home and a man will do whatever it takes to protect that. I'm not a hero, I'm just a man, ignore what these fools say. Naruto waved off the booze since the tavern patrons all disagreed with his statements of his own heroism. A hero and a man, they don't have to be exclusive to each other. The path you've chosen for yourself, how you define yourself as a man, is very similar to how many define heroes. Michael argued very lightly with Naruto. Naruto glanced at him with a shrug. Then I'm a hero to you, but to me I'm just Naruto. So, what brings you gents here? It can't just be to hear my stories. Naruto chuckled, since he could see any arguing would just be going in a big circle. He never hated the term hero, he just didn't believe it applied to him. I would like to offer you a position. Sorry boys, but I have no intentions on leaving this village. There you are, Kurama. Naruto felt a fox hop into his lap and he grinned before he leaned against the table. Anyway, I'm not leaving the village. Whatever you're offering me, I'll have none of it. Naruto denied the offer before it could even be completed. Surziches laughed when he saw Michael's jaw drop. Yeah, you really do move to your own flow. Yes, I guess offering you a home when you've already found a good home like this wouldn't appeal to you. My offer would be different than Michael's offer, but I can tell I won't be able to make you leave either. So let's say we spend the afternoon drinking. I want to hear more stories, this time from your mouth. Surziches had a wide grin on his face, happy that Naruto was still the same in this aspect. He moved to his own beat. Once his mind was set on something, there wasn't any changing his mind. Now, that sounds like a fine idea, lad. Don't worry, your drinks are on me. Naruto laughed out as he raised his mug and cheered it against Surzich's mug. The next day. Blarg. You shouldn't have drunk beyond your limit, this is your punishment. Surzich's own wife, Grafia, lectured him as she set about cleaning the mess he made of the floor. He had come home through a teleportation circle, completely wasted. He didn't even make it to bed, he passed out on the floor like a sack of potatoes, speaking of which. Grafia looked at the 6 sacks of the produce that he had brought home with him. Surziches threw up again. But Naruto is my hero, he wanted to drink, so I had to drink, and he had so many cool stories for me, Surziches simply whined. The door burst open loudly. Surziches? Where is my husband? I thought you were bringing him back. He threw up again when he heard the shouts of Serafal. This was going to be a long day. Then Alana, you're not serious about going against me on this, are you? Zeodicus had to ask when his wife proposed something that was honestly strange for her. Then Alana was heavily pregnant, nearly to the point that she would be giving birth in only about a month's time. She was pregnant with their first child in hundreds of years since their last one, a girl that they would be naming Rias. What then Alana didn't know was why Zeodicus had wanted to name her Rias, but the fact that she was being named after, well, it didn't matter. They had been offered a marriage contract by the Lord and Lady of the Phoenix family, a prestigious family in its own right. With the invention of the evil P system, there were so few pure-blooded devils in the underworld now that several families were now seriously considering arranged marriages once more in order to bolster the numbers of their natural species. I understand the need for a pure-blooded devil to be born in our lineage, but as it stands, there is something that is even more beneficial to our species as a whole. A marriage to the Phoenix would give birth to very powerful children indeed, but would the marriage between their son and our future daughter produce a super devil? Then Alana asked her husband calmly. While arranged marriages were a normal thing in the underworld, most pure-blooded devils were married that way in the past, including herself. It was very uncommon in most of well everywhere else now. Then Alana wasn't against marrying her daughter off to the Phoenix family. She just knew there was a better option available to them, one that didn't simply benefit their family, but benefited devil society as a whole. Similar to Surziches and Ajuka, you mean Surziches was born oddly powerful, and Ajuka was much the same. And Shui Leviathan. Alana pointed out the new Leviathan's name, since recently Shui had battled against her own mother for her title. Serafal had been soundly defeated by her daughter, a daughter who had been born with similar levels of magical power to Surziches and Ajuka. She's a half-breed, but to deny her status as a super devil would be foolish. There are better options, ones that will ensure more super devils birthed. Zeodicus, what sounds better for the family, a Grimory Phoenix marriage or having a second super devil birthed from the family? Then Alana asked her husband with a knowing smile, since she knew he was a smart man. He could see the value behind her idea. Naruto Uzumaki is Shui Leviathan's father, and his previous incarnation died 3 years ago, according to Surziches. While the secrets to his unnatural battle power are still a mystery, it seems genetics in Shui showed that same genetic quirk of unexplained power. We both know it will likely be decades before another Naruto Uzumaki appears. Zeodicus could understand where she was coming from, and he could see the benefit as well. It was just completely reliant on pure luck allowing the next Naruto to be born and them to find where he was going to be born, with enough time to arrange a marriage between him and their daughter. Shui had inherited his DNA, and with his DNA, she had unlocked her own super devil powers that put her as a powerhouse on par with the current Beelzebub and Lucifer, which would make 3 of the 4 Satan super devils. Then Alana smiled in a way that surprised him. Only, we have a way to track where Naruto will appear. A certain immortal fox that spends all of its time with Naruto's grave, her. Alana trailed off lightly. Moving to where the next Naruto will be born. That fox never leaves Naruto's grave unless it's to go and meet the next Naruto, but it's only been 3 years, he has never reincarnated that quickly. Zeodicus was surprised when he realized that his wife had realized something that most only realized after the fox had been moving, but nobody ever decided to take advantage of. While Surziches would check the grave every few years to see if the fox was still there, he never made it a point to follow the fox at all times. Zeodicus blinked in surprise when he realized that while the castle had many maids, every day there was always 1 or 2 maids that he just could never seem to find on that day. He put 2 and 2 together. I believe this such marriage would be far more beneficial to the family. Rias will be my daughter and will inherit my power of destruction, while also inheriting your own magical talent. She will be genetically superior to either of us. Our DNA produced Surziches. What will her superior DNA produce when combined with Naruto's DNA? Then Alana asked him, and it was rather simple. They had an example where Naruto's DNA had mixed together with strong DNA and produced a devil that was on par with super devils. The devil born with no unique magical skills, who only used her mother's ice magic and still managed to gain the powers of super devil using that normal magic. That would still be just a devil on par with Surziches. Zeodicus theorized for her, and she shook her head. If you and I produced Surziches, then what would Rias, who has our DNA, and a Naruto Uzumaki, produce together? Anyway, truthfully, I'm still rather bitter over Serafal managing to get Naruto as her husband. I would like having Naruto become family, even if I am happily married to my beloved husband. Then Alana knew her husband had gotten over the fact he was not her first love and that somewhere in her heart she still had feelings for Naruto. He had hundreds of years to come to terms with the facts of the matter, just like she had so much longer to come to terms with the fact she could never be with Naruto. Zyodicus seemed to be seriously considering it. According to Surziches, it does seem to be that the other factions are targeting Naruto as well. If the fallen angels or angels can somehow use him to start producing super fallen angels and super angels, I can't see that as good for our species. Zyodicus muttered to himself out loud. The other factions and pantheons were after Naruto, it was always a war for everyone aware of who he was, to try and get him to their side. Seraphil had married him, but even she had failed to get him to their side. The Naruto that she married had loved her and his daughter, but he had never warmed up to their species. He had chosen to live and die as a human, a decision that everyone who knew him had respected. He was a man who had stood by what he believed in, and that was that he was born a human and would die one. Nobody, not even his daughter, had faulted him for dying the way he wanted to die. Naruto might have lived in the underworld, but he was still on the side of humans as a whole. I can't be with him, but if we can get him on our side we can finally truly end his curse. With his curse ended, maybe those of us who knew him can finally come forth and tell the truth about his legacy, and he can get the credit he deserves as a hero. Venelana imagined how that would go. With Naruto no longer dying and being reborn, whoever it was that kept erasing the records of him in the history books and silencing those who knew his legends by memory would be unable to act against a still living Naruto. Yes, she supported the reasons that she gave her husband because they were good for her race. That mentioned, she had been on a mission for hundreds of years now, many hundreds of years, to try and fix the wrongs that had been done. She had been forced to give up on her ability to go and find Naruto, so she entrusted the duty to her son, who took to it with enthusiasm. Now he was too busy with his duties to take on the mission to end Naruto's curse. Now, she was passing the duty down to the next best person she knew she could trust. Who better to take on the mission than her own daughter? It will be unfortunate that we will be turning down the Phoenix family. Riser seemed like a nice young man to me, but you raise excellent points. Of course, knowing my wife Zyodicus trailed off and Venelana pulled several papers out of her cleavage. Kurama has been seen at this house, there are a couple of low-lives there. The woman is already pregnant and Kurama is showing interest in her. I've had a maid approach them and see if they were open to the idea of selling their child's hand in marriage to us. Venelana already had almost everything finished. The couple was more than willing to sell their child to them. Zyodicus blinked. Wait, what? I know, odd for us devils, arranged marriages are something very normal, but for humans in this day and age, it is unthinkable that they would agree to an arranged marriage. They are quite horrible parents, willing to sell their child for money. Venelana could see the disbelief on her husband's face. Devil and human society work differently, and while they were going to arrange for their daughter to marry, it was for the betterment of their race. The reasons why they would have arranged for her to marry the Phoenix son would be so that more pure-blooded devils would be born in the future. It had nothing to do with money, land, or personal gain. Yet, humans were actually selling their unborn child for money. Even by devil standards, selling your own child for something like money was something only absolutely horrible parents would do. The maid at least had trouble, right? No, she didn't have to persuade them at all. She offered them money and they just wanted to know how much. You would know better than me, but are all Narutos in the reincarnation line born to horrible parents? I mean, a few Narutos ago one was born to the literal emperor of China and the man was trying to get his son killed. Zyodicus mentioned, remembering the only example he could think of where one of Naruto's parents were alive and well. According to the legends his wife told him, Naruto's parents were rarely ever mentioned. He was usually without any family at all. Venelana smiled in victory. Chapter end. Master was back again. The small fox looked towards a pregnant woman with excited eyes, tail wagging as its gaze fell directly on her stomach. Master is back with me again. The fox remembered so fondly, the one who rescued him from the dark place where everything was cold and alone. The master with blonde hair and blue eyes, the master who had treated him with love and kindness since he was but a kid. The master with an iron will, who would stand up to gods and defeat them for even a small creature like him. The master who had such a strong heart, who took care of those who needed to be taken care of. With a weapon that never struck down the innocent and good of heart, a sword the master had forged with his own 2 hands using the metal that he himself had unearthed. Master had died though, leaving him alone. Yet, he didn't die like Master. For a long time he waited where Master died and was buried, waiting for Master to come back like Master always would. The long time passed and Master didn't show up. So, just like how Master found him when he died, he went looking for Master. He knew that if he looked hard for Master, he would find him. After all, Master found him when he died and he rescued him from that hellish loneliness that was being dead. He couldn't leave his Master alone, even though for some reason he wasn't dying like Master died. He found Master. He didn't know how, but he found him. But Master was different. Master had become young again when he found him. He had the same whiskers as Master though, and he felt right. He talked differently, but that same kindness was there. When Master saw him again, he could tell Master didn't remember him, but that was okay. After all, Master didn't need to remember him. Master had been there for him when he most needed him, and being by Master's side was all that mattered anyway. Master was different in more than just looks. He had a dream of sailing the seas and becoming a bad guy who saved people and stopped other bad guys. He rescued those who needed help, stole the stolen shiny things from bad people who stole them, and gave them to those who they belonged to. Master was the bad guy, but even as the bad guy, Master was the good guy. Master lived a life like that, and even though Master didn't remember him, he was still loved by Master. Master didn't remember him, but even Master could never forget his name, the name the first Master gave him. So he stayed with Master when he died. He had to stay with Master because he loved him. He didn't know how long he stayed with Master, but Master's death wasn't real anymore. Master didn't die, he just took a long nap. When Master went to sleep, he waited where Master was resting. He felt it. He could feel Master, so far away like before, but he followed where he felt and he found Master in a hot place with a lot of sun. Master was fighting a large animal, but Master was having so much fun. With his whisker marks and those same looks he always remembered, Master could even fight his enemies and show them love and kindness. Master didn't just fight large animals, he even fought monsters, big and giant ones, but Master never showed any fear, he just smiled. Master was always surrounded by women, barely a week went by where Master didn't seek to give his heart out to a woman who he wanted to be with. No woman stayed though, no woman ever truly stayed with Master. Master was so lonely, nobody stayed, but Master kept being himself and trying to find the love of his life. Master fell asleep again. Master fell asleep, so he needed to stay with him and keep him company until he woke up again. Master was always so sleepy, falling asleep for so long, but it didn't matter how long he was asleep. He would always be with Master because he loved Master. Having a Master who took long naps, he could never leave Master alone to nap. Whenever Master fell asleep, the people he helped, the humans, always forgot about Master. Humans were horrible, forgetting about the Master who helped them. It was okay though, he would never forget Master because Master always remembered his name. Even if Master was forgetful over who he was, Master always remembered one thing, his name. He just needed to wait until Master was awake again so that he could say his name once more. Like always, Master woke up somewhere different. It was a long journey, very long, but he finally found Master once more. Master was grinning like always, he had just saved a young human girl from a man who was naked. Master stayed with the girl and she cried in his arms for hours. He never let go of the woman until she was ready because that was Master for you. He would always give his all into everything he did, be it fighting a giant monster or doing something like being a shoulder to cry on. Master was such a good Master that a bright man from the sky even asked Master for help and Master just smiled and helped out. Master fought a monster the size of a mountain. Master fought for so long and he got so hurt, but even very hurt, Master didn't stop fighting for even a second. The mountain monster was hurt as it battled Master and the bright man from the sky, and when the big monster was finally defeated and the bright man was tired, only Master stood up tall and proud like always. Master stood tall and proud, but he didn't have long. It was okay though that Master was going to nap again soon, because when Master's gentle hand pet his head, everything was okay. He was just happy that he and Master could spend some time awake again. Master suffered for so long, waiting for somebody who would hear his story, and he found it when a young male with red hair listened to his story. Happy that he could pass on his story, Master fell asleep again. It was okay though. Master wasn't alone, he was with Master, so he was never alone. Master always woke up. It took a while, but he felt Master starting to wake up again, so he needed to be there when Master woke up. Master had woken up in the hot a few times, but this time where Master was cold. Last time, he had Master to take him across the ocean to a new land, but this time he needed to cross it himself. It was okay though, Master went to death itself to find him, so he would cross the water and the cold to find Master. Master would do the same for him. When he found Master, he was different. Master was working, Master was always a hard worker, but this time Master was working with things he had never seen before. Master's face was the same, but the expressions on it were always so different. Master worked with metal and sparks, making human-shaped metal things that moved on their own. Master's face seemed happy as he worked on his creations, and Master was always happy to talk to him about everything. Master was all alone, but he seemed so happy. No, Master was never alone. Kurama was always there to be with Master. Then it changed, Master worked and he created armor for himself, it looked good on Master. Yet, the armor made Master so sad and angry. Master seemed far more lonely than ever before. Master was still the same kind and loving master, but it seemed that he lost something precious to him. Master didn't work with the same passion as before and he got angry with himself a lot. Master was still always kind to others, but when Master thought he was alone, he would cry and be angry. Master was a dreamer. Master was always working towards a goal, but for the first time Master had attained his goal. He had done amazing things, Master was the best there could be. It was strange though, Master no longer needed to work towards a goal, no goal was out of Master's reach. But when Master attained everything, he seemed so lost. How could Master gain everything, but seem like he lost everything? Master was a dreamer. Without a dream, Master had no purpose. He didn't know what to do to help Master, for the first time being with Master was only causing Master more pain. Master wanted to go to sleep again. So, he found 4 people who were looking for Master and he led them to where Master was. He couldn't help Master, but maybe these human-looking evil things could help Master. Now that he thought about it, the red-haired man was the same red-haired boy from when Master helped a bright man from the sky. He got bigger, but he wasn't able to help Master this time either. They couldn't help Master. Master went to sleep again shortly after they left. He didn't understand at the time, but he understood later. Humans need a purpose, a real purpose, and by becoming perfect, Master lost his purpose. Master stood at the top of all species, but it must have been lonely at the top. Master's purpose had always been chasing a dream, and whenever Master got his dream, he always chased a new dream. Master's purpose in life had been chasing his dreams, but when he could no longer do that, Master had lost his purpose. He understood. His dream was to be with Master, to help Master fight against the enemy that called itself loneliness. Master had become able to do everything and anything, so there was no dream Master could chase. Master had nobody who could stand as his equal, no dreams he could work for to achieve. He had failed to protect Master from the loneliness. He would protect Master better when he woke up, he would never make the same mistake. He would make sure that Master always felt like he had a purpose. When Master woke up, he was born to royalty, but Master's father tossed him aside. It was okay though, because he would be with Master. When Master was old enough, his father forced Master to join fighters who would fight monsters. Master's father wanted Master dead, but Master didn't care. Unlike the Master who just went to sleep, this Master had a dream. Protect those of his land who needed him. Master loved his people dearly. He even left his people for their sake, going to the land that he was not from and eventually mating with a female. He remembered this female, she was the female that he had led Master last time. She tried to make Master like her and she gave Master a child. Master loved his mate and his child so very much, but they didn't understand something about Master. Master wasn't afraid of going to sleep. So many creatures with long lives were afraid of death, they wanted to make Master live forever so he could escape death. Master didn't want that though, even though he didn't remember it. Master knew that his mate would be sad, but Master wanted her to cherish his memory. It took him a long time to realize this, but as long as he remembered all of the times that Master woke up, he was never dead. That was why he always said Master was just asleep, because Master was always alive. He would always remember Master, it didn't matter if everyone forgot, because Kurama would always remember. Eventually, Master woke up again. It was hard to get out of the land of not humans, but eventually he did and returned to Master again. Master was strong and brave, protecting everyone around him like always. This Master was so similar to how he remembered Master a long time ago, though Master drank the funny water that made everything dizzy a lot. Master was always helping people build homes and feed their families and fight their wars. Nobody understood it, but Master was sick. Master had been born with something that made him wrong, and since Master didn't have a lot of time to stay awake this time, Master took care of all of those around him, he wanted to use all of his time awake to make other people's lives the kind of lives he wanted to live. Master loved his village, Master's heart was so big he considered all of them his family. He hated them. When Master died, they forgot about him too. How dare they forget about Master, who fought tooth and claw for them. Master gave everything he had to make their village prosper, Master would come home every night spitting up blood after pushing himself too hard. He hated the humans who forgot about Master's love. It was okay though, because he would never forget Master. Master was about to wake up. Once more, Master was going to wake up from his nap, but something was different this time. He saw the woman with flaxen hair, the woman who had chased after Master several times ago, and she smelled like the red-haired man. He recognized her a little, but it had been such a long time. She was talking with Master's mother and father, and she was giving them the green thing that humans gave to each other in exchange for things. None of that mattered though. It didn't matter what happened. He would be there for Master. Chapter end. Story start. One day soon your curse will be broken, I promise. The secret room. It was a room that nobody at the Gremory estate other than Venelana, Zeodicus and Surziches knew of at this point. The maids didn't know the room existed, the butlers didn't know it existed, none of their servants knew of the room's existence. The ones who built the room itself had forgotten about it even, and while Zeodicus never had any reason to visit the room since he had no emotional attachment to it, both the man's wife and son would visit the room every few weeks. It was a small library with several outfits and weapons hanging from the wall. The weapons and copies of each of the outfits that the various Narutos had worn over the years, recreated from memory by Venelana or Surziches. While they couldn't get access to the original outfits, Naruto was never buried with his weapons. Each of the weapons hanging on the wall were the original weapons, used by each hero. The weapons had been studied for years, and it had been proven that each weapon was an absolutely normal weapon. The sword that defeated Hades, a normal sword. The pirate's blade that defeated legendary sea monsters, a normal saber. The rapier used to kill hundreds of monsters, a normal rapier. The guns used to battle against a legendary beast sealed by God, normal guns. The list could go on, but none of the weapons had any special attributes about them, they weren't supernaturally enhanced, holy, or demonic weapons. "Mother, I knew I would find you here." Surziches found his mother, who he had figured would be in this room on this day, as he walked through the secret entrance to it. The room might be a library, but it also served as a secret museum as well. The history, and a copy of every book that had even the smallest mention of a Naruto, was in this room. The leftovers of Naruto's personal belongings from his many lives, other than the Naruto who married Seraphil since she would never part with those items, could be found in this room. While Naruto's history, for the rest of the world, might have been completely purged from living memory, this room alone had all of that history. That was why it was kept a secret. Whatever force was out to erase his history, they could not risk it finding out about this room, the last bastion for the stories of old. Of course, so how is he doing? Venelana asked without looking away from the ancient, battle-scarred sword of the hero that had saved her life. 6 years. 6 years ago today, she had purchased Naruto's hand in marriage for her daughter Ria's Gremory. She had taken him from the human world that would never truly appreciate him and brought him to the Gremory castle as a baby. Of course, she didn't want her personal feelings to pervert Naruto's teachings as he was raised, so she forced herself to have as little to do with his growth during the earliest developmental stages as possible. What she had loved about Naruto, she didn't want to taint his natural growth into a hero he was always meant to be. So, he was being raised by the maids of the castle, at least until he was old enough to have more of his personality set in stone. He's doing well, though he is still adamant about refusing to study, according to his teachers at least. He's playing well enough with Rias as well, and she has taken a real shine to him. Surziches gave a status report of what the maids had told him. This was something he personally didn't agree with, but he could understand why it was being done. Naruto and Rias were being allowed to grow as friends naturally before the news of their arranged marriage was made known to each of them. Of course she's my daughter. Venelana already knew Rias was going to get along with him and seek him out. She had loved Naruto, Surziches had sought out Naruto and came to respect him higher than any other, and of course naturally her daughter would come to grow into those strong feelings as well. It was expected. I think Naruto should be allowed to go to the human world though. It would be good for him to interact with his own kind as well. Surziches, this is too important. If Naruto interacts with humans too soon, it might inspire him to choose humans. Raising him in the underworld with our kind is important. Venelana could not stress that part enough. Every Naruto previously had always refused to turn into a devil when offered. Why? His pride as a human. Naruto prided himself as being human too much to allow himself to be turned, at least all the previous Narutos were like that. That was a problem for prolonging his lifespan to allow them to break his curse though. The curse evolved with each Naruto, so each Naruto's curse was a little harder to try and break. They needed a lot of time to try and break that curse, and that time was longer than a human lifespan. How to fix this problem? Don't let Naruto be raised as a human, or rather, by raising him around their species, they could at least get rid of any desire Naruto would have to refuse a simple request. This was something that only the Gremory family would be able to do, and something that can only be done by Rias. Only Rias had any chance of allowing Naruto to become a devil in a way that would not go against Naruto's core ideals that each Naruto inherited. Freedom. Kindness. Love. Kindness. The Gremory family was the only family among the Pillar 72 that were known for the kindness they showed to their servants and other species in general. While other families could be kind, they weren't famous for it like the Gremory was. Only the Gremory family's kindness matched up with Naruto's core ideal of being kind to others. Freedom. Only by marrying into a high-class family could Naruto instantly gain his freedom despite being a devil that would have been once a human. By marrying a high-class devil, even as a reincarnated devil, Naruto's status would get a natural boost to high class by marriage. Naruto valued his freedom too much as well, a core ideal all Narutos carried. Being in a peerage meant being a servant or slave depending on which family owned you. Marrying Rias meant that, despite technically being her property, once they became married he would regain his freedom and become her equal. Love. The one thing that every Naruto valued, above even freedom and kindness, was love. Among devils, only the Gremory were known for their ability to show unconditional love to others with no ulterior motive. Even Venelana wasn't naturally able to do this, her husband, son, and daughter were able to do this, but not her. She had been changed by the Gremory love, but her love didn't come without conditions. Stopping Seraphil is the problem, seeing as she no longer holds the Leviathan position, she is allowed a lot more freedom now. She's going to try and get Naruto to marry her again. Surziches could see where that headache was coming from. Seraphil had been the only devil in history who had managed to court successfully a Naruto incarnation. All others had failed because they had lacked several of the qualities needed, and even Seraphil failed to turn Naruto. It was through Seraphil though that they figured out the conditions where Naruto might agree to be turned. 1. Naruto must not be raised with human pride. 2. Naruto will only marry somebody who has great kindness. 3. Naruto will only marry somebody with great love in their heart. 4. Naruto will not surrender his freedom easily, Naruto must be able to remain free. 5. Naruto will not allow anyone to control his fate, Naruto must be turned by somebody who will not seek to control his future. And Rias fulfills those conditions, Venelana whispered to herself as she looked at her own notes that she had painstakingly created ever since the creation of a method to turn humans and other species into devil hybrids. She had made sure that she took Naruto out of the human realm, fulfilling the first condition, and she had Naruto raised nearby Rias for the sole purpose of getting Rias to value Naruto's opinions and ideals. That way she wouldn't try and manipulate his fate in the future. 1. Naruto was not raised by humans. 2. The Gremory family was known for kindness. 3. Rias was an extremely loving girl by nature. 4. Marrying Rias would allow him to regain his freedom easily and she won't lord her class over his head. 5. Rias will value Naruto as a childhood friend too much to control his fate. The conditions had been met. I still feel bad about this, we're manipulating his early life. I raised you. Huh? Surziches asked with a blink. Parents, all parents, manipulate their children to try and instill certain ideals into them and promise good futures for them. Every parent manipulates their children to raise those children into the people that they want that child to turn into. What we are doing is no different than what a parent does. Venelana was a little annoyed when Surziches didn't seem to realize that you could not interact without people without some desire to manipulate them a little. If you ever argued with anyone, you were trying to manipulate them. If you wanted fast food and your friend wanted to stay at home and you argued over it, those two friends were trying to manipulate each other into obeying the other one. The intentions of the manipulation was not bad though, it was always the intentions and the consideration for the person in question that determined if the manipulation was good or bad. You wait. Surziches, even you were manipulated your father and I love you, and because we love you, we raised you to be the kind of person we believed you could be. Would you call what we did for you unkind? Venelana asked, because while Surziches was extremely old by human standards, to her he was still a very young devil. He still had much to learn, much that she could still teach him by her experience. Of course not. We took Naruto from parents who were willing to sell him to stranders. He is being raised by servants who are showing him love, care, and affection. We are trying to end his curse, which forces him and everyone who loves him to suffer. We are also giving both him and Rias a chance to be happy in the future, since otherwise she would have had to marry somebody else in a different arranged marriage. Venelana explained to Surziches, who had only been fully informed of the entire plan rather recently. He knew about the marriage, but he had not known about Naruto's parents selling him so easily. She felt that if she told Surziches the amount of money the parents sold their child for, he would go and kill those parents this very day. When you put it that way. It is my desire to give him a loving family, breaking his curse, and allowing my daughter to marry somebody who will love her, an example of me trying to maliciously manipulate them. I want to give them both a better life. Rias would have had to marry Riser Phoenix, and you've seen the kind of man he has become lately. Venelana explained to Surziches. She didn't view a single thing that she was doing as ill-intentioned. Anyway, I need to go pick up Naruto's birthday present. Please, lock up when you leave. Venelana started to walk by Surziches. She had a birthday party to prepare for. Chapter end. Story start. Today, my lady Gremory, you will be getting your first familiar. A wondrous occasion to be true. Once you've made a pact with your first, any more in the future will come far more naturally. I'm here too. A young 10-year-old, Naruto pointed out as he stood next to an 11-year-old Rias who was beaming with excitement as she was showed the magic to bind a familiar to her service. He had been dragged along by her, even though he didn't really care about familiars, since he wasn't able to use magic to get one for himself. As a human among devils, kind of awkward for him since he wasn't able to do any of the kinds of training or rituals that Rias was getting to do naturally as she grew up. He was happy for her, but to say he wasn't jealous of her at the same time would be a lie as well. Don't worry Naruto, one day when we get married, I'll reincarnate you into my peerage and you can get your own familiar. Rias proclaimed with excitement, her eyes twinkling as she looked at him. Her childhood friend, one of the two childhood friends that she had, who she loved very dearly. Her mother, just recently, had told her that she would be marrying Naruto when she became old enough to do so. That worked for her. She loved him and wanted to marry him anyway. She always told him that she would take him as her husband when she got older anyway, so being told she had always been intended to marry him worked out well for her. The fact alone that she loved him before she had been told might have only made her even more excited for the fact that she would get to marry the boy she loved. Unlike her friend Sona, her parents were still trying to arrange marriages for her with people that she did not love. Kurama yipped at her. No familiar for me, I already have Kurama. Naruto shifted around nervously when she brought up that point. He didn't really know how to feel about being in an arranged marriage with Rias. Kurama yipped again, but this time it sounded happy. Lady Rias, Lord Naruto, I believe these matters are best left for later, until Lady Rias has attained a familiar. Grafia stated, made uniform attire on her body as always, as she stood behind the young children. She had been instructed by her husband to keep watch on them as Rias walked in the familiar forest, just to make sure that they stayed safe. Rias had inherited the power of destruction, just like her mother and elder brother, but because of her age and inexperience, her power was still far too immature to be able to truly defend herself against the more powerful familiars in the forest. If she walked across the Hydra or a dragon, she would surely be defeated with ease and destroyed as a result. Naruto was a normal human child. He had no special powers, no magic, no enhancements, and he had not started training with any weapons as of yet either. Though, his abnormally large stamina reserves and astronomically strong willpower could not be compared to even an adult's without making the adult pale in comparison. Okay, 1ECH Grafia. Rias, you're not Japanese, please don't use Japanese suffixes, makes you look like a weeb. Naruto commented in a deadpan tone, and Rias blushed crimson just like her hair when he said that to her. He was Japan, at least born in Japan, and even he didn't use suffixes or speak much Japanese for that matter. In contrast to him, Rias loved absolutely everything to do with the country of Japan and would often try and add a little bit of Japan flavor to her vocabulary. He didn't get the appeal. Well, he understood the appeal since Urziches had given him a private birthday gift of a few very special games that had been made in Japan. Games that Urziches had told him not to let others see him playing and not to tell anyone that he had been the one to give him those games since they were very adult in nature. Yes, Urziches gave him porn. But Urziches. Well, it is important for a young man entering puberty to have a healthy outlet for his sexual energies. Not to mention, Rias is a fan of everything Japan, so one day they might be able to bond over H games, and by introducing this to him early in life, his future sexual preferences can include a more wide array of women. Humans are naturally into monogamy, and devils are naturally more prone to polygamy, better to guide him towards being accepting of it now. Urziches explained as he looked at his mother and father, who were holding a small stack of hentai games that a servant had found in Naruto's room. He had been called into this meeting to discuss why he had given a 10-year-old porn. Your son is an idiot. Why is he my son when he is an idiot? Zeodicus asked with a dull tone. Because you are an idiot anyway, well I appreciate what you are doing Urziches. It is better to wait until he is actually old enough to be sexually interested in these games. Then Alana had no issues with the fact it was porn, her only issue was that he was too young to really have a normal interest in the games. It was one thing to be sexually amorous, but by introducing sex at too young an age, it normalizes the act and will do more harm than good in the long run. Rias, even from a younger age, had loved the boy that she grew up with even more. She was informed that they were to be wed. Getting Rias to be sexually interested in Naruto was no problem. Rias was 11 now, and she now had a member of her own peerage to call her own. Rias was already in puberty, her devil blood causing her body to mature faster than a human's body. She could already pass for a young 14 or so. The problem was Naruto. Since he still hadn't started puberty, he had not started to show a real sexual interest in anything. Introducing something sexual to him would color his tastes in the future, which could cause him to develop interest in a type that wasn't his wife-to-be. And the real reason you don't want him to have the games? Zeodicus whispered as Urziches teleported out of the room. I don't want Rias to get her heart broken or my plans to end his curse to fail. I mean, the main female protagonist of this game is a redhead and Rias is already what a C-cup. The main girl in this game has big breasts, if Rias is like you or my mother, she will be stacked very soon. I mean, this one has a harem setting with wow, nice you know, until he is old enough. Zeodicus, you have me and a harem, you do not need to be playing Japanese porn. I'm worried though, the familiar forest is a dangerous place, and while Rias is strong for her age, I'm worried they might wander into a dangerous part of the forest. Venelana spoke with some motherly worry in her tone. It was rare for her to allow her control over her emotions to slip, but her husband smiled at it. She was more of a traditional devil than he was, she wasn't a Gremory by blood, and she was still slightly into the old ways, where emotional bonds were less important than other bonds. He was happy to see her finally starting to change, even if only a little. Well, they are with Grafia, what is the worst that can happen? Shit. With Grafia. I take my eyes off them for a second and they vanish. Come on Rias, give me something to sense. Flare your magic, use a spell something so that I can find you. Grafia flew through the sky as she looked down at the forest for the lost children. Sensing people wasn't just so easy as them existing, as a child Ria's power wasn't high enough for her to sense without Ria's charging up a spell or her knowing where to try and sense. She needed to find them, and fast. Also, she needed to scold them for this as soon as she made sure that they were safe and sound. She heard a loud roar and she saw several trees fall to the ground as she viewed the multiple heads of a hydra flailing around. Focusing her sensing in that direction, she could sense a devil in that location. Just barely, meaning it was a child that she was sensing or a super weak adult. She flew down towards the ground and she saw the hydra fall onto its side. She heard a child crying. Naruto ooh. Thank goodness they are. Grafia paused when she looked and saw Rias collapsed on the ground, tears streaming down her face as she cried in utter relief. Rias had no injuries other than a few scuffs on her knees from where she had fallen, but scuffs like that would be healed in a day or two, even without healing magic. Wait, Grafia looked and saw neither child had any life-threatening injuries, both were perfectly okay. The hydra was dead though. The hydra had a sword stabbed into its heart, a rusted old sword that was covered in dirt and grime. The hydra was old and battle-worn, with swords from its fallen victims stuck in its body in places. It had fresh wounds though, and standing there holding the sword that had killed it was a blood-covered Naruto as he backed away from the hydra and fell onto his butt as well, shocked at what he had done. Naruto thank Rias scrambled to her feet and chased down Naruto, tackling him to the ground as she hugged him. She had yet to even notice Grafia had arrived yet. Grafia looked at them and she hurried to their side. Lady Rias, Lord Naruto, please explain what happened. Grafia gently demanded as she looked at them, using his sleeve to gently get the blood off of Naruto's face. He blinked a few times before he finally seemed to notice that she was there. She looked around and she saw that Kurama was limping towards them with an injured leg, the leg clearly snapped at the bone. Kurama started to lick the blood off of his master and she looked towards Naruto who just looked at Rias and Kurama and took a breath of relief. "They're okay." Naruto smiled and collapsed onto his back. "Naruto, what happened?" Grafia asked with more authority in her voice since Naruto had yet to answer. Rias wasn't in a state where she could really tell what was happening, considering that she was crying in relief. At her age, coming face to face with a hydra would have been absolutely terrifying, be they a human or devil child. "It hurt Rias and Kurama, they were protecting me and got hurt, and I don't know." Naruto repeated to her what little he remembered. Now that they were safe, he was showing the right reaction of fear and relief for what had happened. Grafia put her hand on his forehead. No sacred gear and no magic, but he killed the hydra. Rias tried to protect him, and his pet tried to protect him. They got hurt. Did something in him snap? It seems that he really doesn't remember the battle after Rias was hurt. Grafia tried to rouse Rias gently from her crying state by cradling both children in her arms and letting them take comfort in her breasts. None of it was making sense to her. She saw that Rias had a small bat that was clinging to her shoulder, one that was magically bonded to her. They're familiar, at least she got what she came to the forest for. Grafia looked at the sword as well, and she sensed no special power from the sword, nothing that would cause it to give a child the strength to kill a hydra. How did I do that? Naruto didn't seem to even really understand how he did it himself, and that was enough to confirm for her that something about Rias or Kurama getting injured had caused him to snap. She didn't understand how it was possible at all for this to happen. She needed to report this. Chapter end. Story start. I want to attend a human school. Shit. Naruto, surely, you're getting a fine education here at the manor. Zeodicus couldn't see why he wanted to leave. Though, he was a 16-year-old boy, a human who had never even met another human once in his life. Unlike his wife, he at least wanted the boy to go to the human world and see his own kind before he lost his humanity. It was good for a boy to see his origins, and it was an important character-building moment for any young man to face some kind of challenge in his life. The best tutors money could buy. Zeodicus stated with a proud grin. Rias was excelling in her studies. Not only that, but she had filled out her peerage quite nicely, though it wasn't completely full as of yet. She already had a rook, her first peerage member, a rare peerage member since she was a young girl who was of the Nekashu race. She had attained a pawn as well, a young woman who had taken 4 pawns out of her 8 in order for her to turn. A young woman like herself, though far more sadistic, who had been half human and half fallen angel before the transformation. She had gained a knight, a young human boy with a strong sacred gear, who had a strong affinity for demon swords and a sacred gear that allowed him to make them. Finally, she had a bishop, a vampire child with an extremely powerful sacred gear that could stop time for things he was looking directly at. It's not about learning or tutoring or anything like that. I've never even met another human who hadn't already abandoned their humanity or knew a lot about humans. Yudo and Akeno don't count because of their history. Naruto had decided to speak with Zeodicus first on this issue since he was sure that anyone else would have been against him going to the human world far more than this man. He was correct. While his wife and son held nothing but reverence for the human hero known as Naruto Uzumaki, Zeodicus had respect for him, but he was clear-headed. He could see that this was an important step in his path to adulthood. Then Alana will be so angry at me for this. Zeodicus looked at Naruto. He loved the boy, not as the hero Naruto, but as a son at this point. He had watched the boy grow from a baby into a young man, and he had done it without being blinded by hero worship. His views, while different than his wife, were still guided by a form of love as well. At the same time, he also cared about his daughter's happiness and the future generations of the Gremory family. He had a lot of weight on his shoulders to do what was best for his family, which would be to not allow Naruto access to the human world right now. Naruto had shown some reluctance towards marrying Rias. Not out of hate or dislike for her, but because he believed in true love, and since he barely knew any other women besides he wanted to see if his true love was out there. Rias was unaware of this fact since Naruto didn't make it clear, and at the moment, he was willing to marry her, provided his love for her was not challenged by a love for another woman. Please. How about Zeodicus shifted nervously in his seat since Naruto's eyes were unnerving. When Naruto was serious about something, his eyes were filled with a flaming blue sky of determination. You could see the fires in them, and the blue just amplified your ability to really see how far that determination went. It was an unsettling feeling to be staring into somebody's very soul and see their desires so clearly. Eyes that hid nothing from those who looked into them. Please. You know Rias does love Japan. If you go with Rias and manage to. Zeodicus tried to think up conditions his wife would agree with. He couldn't look Naruto in the eyes though. Not fight against your marriage to Rias. You can always form a harem if you fall for another woman, then I think I can manage something. Zeodicus glanced at Naruto. That hope in his eyes was painful for him to see, though it made him happy as well. Rias would be excited as well, since she loved Japanese human culture. Ever since Urzichas introduced her to anime, she had been somewhat obsessed with Japan. Urzichas lavished Rias with gifts of anime, manga, and games from Japan, just as he lavished Naruto with more and more depraved hentai games to fuel his inner lewd desires. I agree. Urzichas. Zeodicus was shocked to see Urzichas standing behind his throne as the man made a move to come out of hiding as he spoke. What was more, you agree to this idea? Zeodicus, and Naruto as well, were shocked by this confession. Urzichas looked towards Naruto. While, personally, I would rather you not contact humans much. You are human right now. Mother believes it would be bad for you to contact humans, and so do I, but in the end I believe you should see where you come from and how was Melty's quest. Urzichas gave a short lecture before he followed up with a small personal question. He grinned at Naruto with his usual goofy grin, allowing Naruto to know he could relax now. Since both Lord Gremory and Lord Lucifer believed Naruto should go to the human world for a time, not even Lady Gremory would be able to oppose this choice. It was a decent game, lots of big titty energy. I played through all of the routes other than the virgin route. I feel like the game developers should have added cast member or two with a small chest. When you have too many massive chests, you don't appreciate them. Having a lowly character around puts the big tits into perspective and makes you appreciate both the big tits and little tits all the more. Naruto gave an in-depth analysis on the porn game that Urzichas got him. Urzichas gave a light chuckle before he nodded his head with a growing grin. I see, and you're right about a balance. In my harem, I tried to keep a good balance so that I could appreciate each woman more. Your point has merit to it. If you don't have a petite woman, then you can't appreciate just how great breasts are. Zeodicus stated, with Urzichas and Naruto nodding in agreement. To truly appreciate something, one must know what it looks like to not have that something as well. To truly appreciate having money, one must also know what it is like to not have much money as well. At least, one must know what it is like to have to earn your money instead of just having it. To appreciate big breasts, one must also appreciate flat chests. Unipop? Urzichas asked Naruto with a grin. Oh. I've played that one, the voice acting in it is top-notch, and the gameplay system is surprisingly fun. Very little smut to the game, but it makes up for it in sheer amusement. Zeodicus crossed his arms and nodded his head several times in fast succession. Ayu is my favorite, a super slutty fairy, a real breath of fresh air in the genre of hentai games. Naruto nodded with a wide grin. Surziches nodded. Personally, I like Venus, a super experienced older woman showing you pleasures you didn't know before. That is just something you don't get with virgins, and when most hentai games use virgins, it is a real treat to have something new. Bonk. Crash. Spank. You three. Venelana had come in with Rias just in time to hear that conversation and how the men were bonding over something so inappropriate. She had given her husband a firm knock to the back of the head for that kind of talk. While she could appreciate the healthy libido, it wasn't appropriate for the head of the Grimmery family to be talking about this around others. "You're a leader, please act like it, sir," Graphia stated as she held a broken vase, which she had shattered on her husband's head. Ria's hand was glowing red since she had slapped Naruto on the ass, with him on the ground holding his butt. She was the only woman with red cheeks after hearing that conversation come from her father, her brother, and the boy she loved. "Naruto, you don't need those games, you have me," Ria stated before she blinked as a small idea came to her. "Unless you're playing those games with me." Ria's gained a slight glint in her eye when the thought of getting him hot and bothered with her in the same room appeared in her mind. She could make use of those games after all. Then Alana sighed as she looked between Naruto, Surziches, and Zeodicus. She had also caught the earlier part of that conversation. "About your earlier conversation, if you want to go to the human realm, Naruto, I'll be adding my own condition you must agree to. Just a single condition: when you marry Rias, you will be a high-class devil by marriage, so while you are in the human realm, you must act like a devil, meaning you will be expected to acquire at least 2 humans who will one day join your peerage." Then Alana wasn't going to give any harsh expectations of Naruto. She wouldn't forbid him to be around humans. She just wanted to make sure that he prepared himself to be successful as a devil when he gave his humanity up, so she wanted him to start to plan for his future peerage. Sounds fair. Naruto could agree to that. Then Alana raised up a finger. "Of course, well, this isn't a condition, I have a second request. Since you and Rias will go to Japan together, I expect the two of you both to do well in school. Rias, you are very intelligent, so I expect you to help Naruto study." Then Alana looked at her daughter and then at Naruto. Naruto deadpanned. "Sorry for being stupid. I'll make sure he gets great grades," Rias promised her mother with a wide smile. Then Alana glanced at her husband, who was sitting on his throne properly again, and he glanced towards her. She had to wonder what he was plotting by going behind her back and messing with her plans, though she could tell he meant no malice. "Naruto has lived his entire life with us, and other than when he defeated the Hydra, he has never shown the power his other lives had. That same power is in him somewhere, maybe this could be good for him as of right now. He's been a rather normal human, though very athletic with abnormal willpower," Venelana thought as she looked at Naruto. She knew that same great potential was inside of him, but it was like he wasn't able to just bring out that potential willingly yet for some reason. It was very strange. The other Narutos were able to access their own great power so naturally, but the current reincarnation was unable to access that power. They still didn't know how his great power worked yet, so maybe this would be a good chance to see how Naruto would do around humans. "Japan, I'm really looking forward to it, right Naruto?" Rias was just happy that Naruto could go to Japan with her. Naruto was just grinning. Story start. He's back in Japan. Look, the hero has returned, he returned. You remember him, right Susanoo? He left the land for a while and defeated Hades. This is so amazing, I can't believe the strongest human has returned home at last. I could just To say that the Japanese gods were in a cluster at the moment trying to decide what the best course of action was troubling to say the least. The second Amaterasu had sensed their old legend return to his home country at last, after hundreds upon hundreds of years. Well, she had called a massive meeting of all of the gods and the gods of the land into one place so that they could talk about what to do. Of course, most of the spirits turned gods who had been born after the first Naruto Uzumaki had left the land were unsure of what they should be feeling. Oh, curse that Aphrodite for placing that curse on him. If only the history books could remember him, but thankfully, us gods have a long memory. Susanoo remembered the young man who had bested him in a one-on-one battle. He remembered the sword that had pierced his armor and inflicted a scar on his ribs. It had been a battle that he could remember dearly when he had first met the boy he had been trying to seduce, a young woman. Though, she had not been too receptive to his advances, and that was when Naruto showed up and fought for the woman's honor. He was ashamed of his loss, of course, but he had been bested fair and square, and thus he had to show honor to the one who defeated him. His only request had been for him to never rape a woman again and to stay loyal to his lover. He had followed that request with honor, since it had been the victor who had requested it. Damn her, just because he rejected the bitch doesn't mean she can curse him. Yuzume stated as she drank a cup of sake with some anger in her tone. She had been rejected by the man too, but you didn't see her cursing the man. Well, she did curse him, but the curse only lasted for 5 days before she realized that she had been too harsh and he was a nice guy. She ended her curse she placed on him and gave him a blessing that he would find happiness one day. Of course, his blessing was still active, meaning he had yet to find the true happiness that she had blessed him with. Oh, I just love that man, his love for his fox, it's just so touching, and his love for agriculture has always been deep. A man-woman person named Inari spoke as she cried tears of joy into her sash, fox ears on her head twitching in joy. When she had heard that Naruto would be forced to reincarnate forever, she knew that the Hades had cursed Kurama with immortality so that the reason he had been defeated would also suffer. So, she had given the fox Kurama a blessing. The blessing to always know where his beloved master was so that the fox could forever find the one person who would love him more than anyone else. She had also blessed him with a scent that all predators would find disgusting and luck so that none would try to hunt the fox. She wanted to make sure that Naruto would always have his partner with him, no matter where he was born. I remember him, such a lovely boy, born to such a loving mother, a shame would happen to her and that a certain god was jealous of her beauty. Kukurahim spoke with a sly look towards a goddess who looked relatively ashamed of herself when reminded that her jealousy had been what killed the first Naruto's mother. What do we do? Everyone stopped when Amaterasu shouted at them. What do we do after such a long time? He's finally back in Japan, our domain, but from what I sense, he's with a group of demons from a different faith. Amaterasu, with her all-seeing eyes, could see that Naruto was currently walking off of the train that traveled between Earth and the underworld. He had a group of demons with him and several of them were attractive females and a boy that looked like a girl. Most of the gods didn't seem interested. I shall have the demons killed and Naruto brought before us so that we may grant him the godhood he deserves. Susanoo demanded as he stood up. I wish to settle a score with him and… No, he can't become a god. This Naruto has yet to accomplish any deeds worthy of such a reward. We won't be able to do such a thing, the rules that we must follow forbid it and he lacks a connection to our pantheon other than his nation of origin. Tsukiyomi stated with a firm tone, explaining why they could not do that. Inari raised a hand. I could always marry. You're not going to marry him, tranny. Kukurahim stated with a dull tone and Inari puffed up in shock and anger when that had been pointed out to her. Everyone else turned to look at her in some shock but she just looked at them. I mean, it's true that marrying Naruto would allow him to become intertwined in our pantheon enough to give him divinity, but I doubt Naruto would be interested in marrying somebody who can't even decide what genitals they have. Kukurahim stated with a finger pointed at Inari. Inari seemed devastated at that realization. Then she looked at Kukurahim. Well, at least I have a body worthy of being a goddess unlike you, who can only remain her mature form for what was it 30 minutes a day. You've lost a lot of power, Kukurahim, enough you've been reduced to a lowly of your former self. Kukurahim slammed her fists into the table. She turned from a mature woman into a lowly. Damn it, it's not my fault I've lost a lot of power, true, but the reason I've taken this form is because of the humans. That an I'm that came out has given a ton of humans the idea that this is my natural form. You know, we take the form that humans believe we have. Kukurahim hated her loss of power and her new lowly form. She hated the fact that her body and looks were decided by what humans believed that she looked like, a collective look as it were, since most humans now thought of her image as that of a lowly. The lowly she became. Inari's genitals and Kukurahim's lowliness aside, Susanoo has a point, but he currently has 4 curses on him. Hades' curse, Aphrodite's curse, Indra's curse, and Hathor's curse. 1. Naruto will reincarnate when he dies. 2. Humans will forget about Naruto when he dies. 3. History written by humans about Naruto will vanish when he dies. 4. Naruto will always lose or be unloved by his human family. Amaterasu listed off the 4 curses that were against Naruto, placed by different gods and a goddess. Each of the curses worked in such a way that they did not go against each other and if anything only made each of the curses that much harder to remove. 2 of the curses worked together in perfect harmony, such perfect harmony that it was amazing that the god and goddess who made those curses didn't work together. He's also got Gaia's curse, since he refused her advances. Yuzume pointed out as well, a curse that had only been done in the last few hundred years. It was a recent curse. Oh, when he beat Trihiksa right, he refused to help her overthrow the Greek pantheon. What was her curse? Amaterasu didn't remember that curse off of the top of her head. That no human woman would ever be able to bear children for him. Tsukiyomi remembered that one and explained it to them. Well, I guess that one won't bother me too much then, once I make him my husband after all. Amaterasu bragged, and there was a long silence. Everyone stared at her for a while before the female goddesses started to stand up, at least those aware of Naruto and without husbands themselves of course. Why are we caught up on marriage? We could just send monsters after his loved ones, and when he slays those monsters we can grant him god status. Susanoo seemed more bored. This had been something the goddesses had been arguing about for hundreds of years, the fated day when Naruto would come back to Japan. Even when he had been born in Japan, they had noticed far too late and a devil scooped him up and took him away. Well, I mean, since I'm. You stay right there, Inari, no Naruto for you. 31 goddesses, major and minor, shouted towards the woman. They all stared at each other. Well, he's already slated to marry a woman anyway, so none of you will get him. What? But Naruto. But you. Naruto and Rias sneezed together in complete unison, a shiver running down their spines as they started to walk towards their new home while they were in the human world. An apartment building that would be hosting most of them together while they were living in the human realm. Rias sneezed in a cute and dainty way. Naruto's sneeze went off like an explosion that startled people nearby. The utter contrast meant that nobody noticed Rias sneeze and everyone noticed Naruto. I feel like somebody is plotting my death. Rias shivered again, since she couldn't shake that feeling that something was wrong. Naruto yawned. I feel lightheaded from that sneeze. Naruto felt a shiver, but unlike Rias, he had no clue what to make of it. Oh well, it was just a sneeze. Story start. So you Trihiksa, ain't ya? Ugly darn beast, I'll give you all the time you need to seal this bastard away then lord. Yes, this is the Emperor Beast of Apocalypse. The last time it surfaced, another hero defeated it and now it has arrived again. It was massive. Naruto tilted his hat up with his gun and looked at the beast who stood several hundred meters tall. It had 7 massive heads of different creatures and 10 horns on its body along with 7 tails coming from its rear. Its main body was like a primate with black fur that had 4 massive and muscular arms covered in scales that mixed in with the fur all over its body. If you need any holy weapons, I will grant them to you now. Thanks plenty, but for this beast there is only one sword and gun I'll use for this battle. Naruto spoke as he started to walk towards the great beast. He reached into his backpack and pulled an ancient-looking sword that was covered in battle scars and rust. The beast flinched back when it made eye contact with the fearless stare of the human before it. It roared and the ground shook. Naruto started to run and he jumped when a massive fist slammed into the ground and cratered it. He gripped the handle of the sword he was using and he sliced the fist off at the wrist with one good swing. Its mouths opened up as Naruto started to run up the fur of its arm and it breathed streams of fire out of multiple heads down towards Naruto, covering its own arm in flames as its fist rapidly regenerated from being sliced off. Trihiksa looked down at the being who sliced its wrist and roared when it saw no burnt being was standing there. It lost a head moments later. Naruto landed on top of its shoulder as the head fell to the ground, only for it to rapidly regenerate as the head started to reach for him on their long necks. Naruto walked across its shoulder and whipped his gun out, shooting Trihiksa right in the pupil of the nearest head that went flying towards him. In surprise and pain, Trihiksa's head jerked back and blocked the path of the rest of the heads that tried to devour Naruto alive. Naruto jumped and sliced through its neck and landed on top of the neck as it started to fall towards the ground. Trihiksa unleashed a powerful bout of flames from one of its mouths as it swung 2 of its massive hands towards Naruto to clap him. Out of his pack, Naruto pulled out a rope and tied his sword to it and before quickly throwing it. It stabbed into Trihiksa and he yanked on it, pulling himself out of the way as he landed on top of its chest just as the giant hands flattened the severed neck he had been standing on. All of the damage he had done to Trihiksa had already healed, but it was still roaring in anger and frustration as Naruto did a backflip and landed on its neck as it bit its own chest. More heads started to come for him again. Out of nowhere, the fastest head swallowed him. The head was cut in half from the inside and Naruto escaped completely unharmed. He sliced off another head that got too close to him as he ran along its severed head and toward its main body. The heads he cut off were already started to regrow and he backed off his target when he needed to cut off all the fingers of one of the fists that tried to grab at him. 3 heads slammed together around Naruto and opened their mouths, gathering superheated flames inside of them. When they unleashed the flames, Naruto used both hands on the sword and started to spin and slash the air around him. The flames didn't even come close to touching his body as Trihiksa's neck around Naruto got scorched to the bone. Trihiksa roared in pain at its own attack hurting it while Naruto stopped spinning with the sleeve of his clothes burned a little. Beast, you've broken the law and I'm placing you under arrest. Naruto tipped his hat up when he noticed it was off-center on his head. Trihiksa started to destroy everything around and out of rage. Naruto shot it in the pupil again and it focused its rage towards him once more. Naruto might be practically an ant before this thing when size was compared, but getting some dust in Trihiksa's eye was enough for it to take notice. Naruto reloaded his gun in less than a second as he started to go on the offense again. Trihiksa's neck started to separate from its body and Naruto jumped onto its shoulder. 7 Trihiksa. Each head separated and was now in control of a different body. Naruto just took out a cigar and placed it in his mouth. He licked his lips and flipped open his lighter before he lit his cigar. He grinned and tossed the lighter into Trihika's open mouth when it roared at him. One of the Trihika's upper halves exploded. Fire is fire, and if I ignite the flames before you, then I guess they explode violently. Damn, that was my only lighter guess, the cigar better count, eh? Naruto jumped and avoided a fist before he landed on it and avoided 20 more fists from the different Trihika's that started to unleash wild punches wherever he stood. Constant movement. Trihika saw Naruto standing on top of the pile of fists and they all pulled back their arms to see that none of them had fists on their arms anymore. Any fist that had gotten too close to Naruto had gotten cut off the arm and were laying in a pile of failed killing blows. I'm nearly ready with the seals, how long can you hold it for? I can hold it as long as the cigar is lit, it's using its full power now and I'm nearly out of ammo. A chief always catches the criminal before his cigar is out after all. Naruto ran towards the beast once more and he used the sword to prevent any flames from hitting him from whatever direction they came from. He missed one. Flames covered part of his body and visible burns appeared that were so deep his bones were visible. Naruto cut off the head that damaged him, though without even grunting in pain, many of his organs were destroyed by the flames that he failed to completely block. He used his cigar to light a stick of TNT that he pulled from his pocket and he tossed it into the eye of one of the beasts and he landed on its nose. A gift from me to you. Naruto stated as the stick exploded and a bloody hole appeared in Trihika's eye that started to heal as quickly as it was damaged, but Naruto took his cigar out of his mouth and shoved it into the beast's nose, getting another angry roar out of it. Smoking it bad for your health there, wasn't good for mine either to be fair. Naruto leaned back and fell off of Trihika as it started to refuse with the rest of its body. It realized that it needed to focus its power in one body in order to be able to kill him properly, so Naruto whistled as he got his rope out. Using the rope, he slowed his fall by hooking it around part of Trihika's fur and he landed perfectly. On a horse. Come on Bucky, we've got to get me a change of clothes, this beast has been arrested. Naruto stated with a forced grin. Seal. This was the third time that Trihika had been defeated. I hope seeing this has helped you come to understand us better. Naruto opens his eyes. That dream, what was that dream? Naruto groaned as he sat up. He ignored the naked Rias that was sleeping next to him, she always did stuff like this so it was no surprise. He wasn't even a full day into the human realm and he was having strange dreams of some version of himself fighting some great and mighty beast. Naruto scratched Kurama's head when the fox leapt into his lap and he smiled down at it with a massive grin. He didn't need any explanations on Kurama, this little guy had been with him for as long as he could remember. Everything in his life was normal as long as he had Kurama with him, without Kurama he just felt like he was missing something important. He would think about his dreams later. He needed to get ready for school now. What if Naruto was childhood fiancé of Rias High School DxD, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys next video.